Welcome to the latest episode of the Claw's Corner. Today's guest has a very interesting and extremely inspiring story to tell. His background is in teaching. He retired and was all set to sit back, relax, and enjoy life. But then the pandemic hit and changed everything. He experienced a sense of isolation and separation, just like so many others. But then something happened that would change his view on life forever. He was asked to chaperone the first Connecticut Forum, which featured Rhiannon Giddens, who's an acclaimed musician who uses her art to excavate the past and reveal bold truths about our present. Her words had a profound impact on him. So here to talk about all of that and much, much more is my guest, Jerry Crystal. Jerry, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. I'm doing good. Thanks very much.
I just gotta say, I love that background.
I appreciate it. And it really does sort of, I think, encapsulates a lot of things. Being in education, being very active and involved in things, and then the pandemic was like something that hit everybody. And I think one of the things that was coming out of that, and this was actually where the part with the Connecticut Forum and Rhiannon comes in, is I was used to working with high schoolers and also other young adults, other people, and there really was this sort of sense that people were sort of like very timid about trying out and doing something else, trying something new. It seems like our society is very much focused on, success is something that's going to happen automatically, that there are all these sort of like safeguards in some ways that people, don't put themselves out there. And I mean, I was feeling the same sort of thing. I was feeling very sort of anxious inside, and had lost friends and had family things and all this related to that. And so this was like the first Connecticut Forum that was back after the pandemic, and I was asked to chaperone some high schoolers. And what would happen is that we would meet with the person who was speaking, like in the half hour or so before, 45 minutes before they would come on and do the regular Connecticut Forum. And we'd have that person all to ourselves. And in this case, it was Rhiannon. And basically the sort of question, I mean, Rhiannon, if you don't know about her, I mean, she had a Black mother, a white father. She grew up in North Carolina. She was studying opera and violin in college. And she met an 80-year-old Black man who taught her about African-American roots music. And she immediately switched to playing the fretless banjo. And she formed a group called the Carolina Chocolate Drops with two friends of hers. They won a couple of Grammys. She went on and has performed in a variety of different, orchestras, different types of music all over the world. And went on, was on a CW TV show, published books, and when she was speaking, that following Saturday night, she and three other Black female fiddlers had sold out Carnegie Hall, and the following weekend, her first opera was being debuted by the Los Angeles Symphony Orchestra, and it was written off of the journal of an Arabic man who was captured in sort of middle age as a slave. And so he wrote about his experiences. And so that journal was turned into this opera. And so I basically said to her, you know what, there are so many people, have difficulty like trying something, moving out from where we are, feel sort of stuck. Well, you've done all these different things. Where did you get the courage to be able to do that? And she said, first I say yes, then I figure out how I'm going to do it. And it was so funny, it was so elemental, but it also is so true. There's so much in that, before we even get to even saying yes or no, we think, oh, well, what about the cat? And then it's going to cost some money, or I'm going to have to get somebody to take and it's like all these other sort of things before, when very often I think, we can be moved or inspired to do something that we are get called to. I mean, are you familiar with Joseph Campbell at all?
I am not, but I want to talk about him. But before we do, I want to talk about your background, my background, because I first met you. Well, I think the first time I ever met you, you and I have a mutual friend named David Robbins, who's an author, and we were part of a writing club together. But then I met you with another mutual friend who puts this show on WAPJ and several other radio stations, Joseph Timothy Quirk. We were doing voiceovers for a show he has. It's played all over the world, Nutmeg Junction, Barnaby Druthers. And the reason I'm bringing that up was that I know I know from talking to you off the air, and I know I have the same attitude. I just always say yes to everything because I've written books, I've been in bands, I helped write a television pilot that never got picked up. I still had a great experience trying to get it out there. I've done motivational speaking, I've done stand-up comedy. I'm doing this show right now. I've been in radio, and I know we're going to get into your background, but people's like, "What? How do you do all these things?" And it's the same exact thing. And I said, you cannot be afraid of failure because sometimes failure is the best thing because something doesn't work out that opens up a door that you never even knew existed and something new happens for you, which is how I got this radio show because I was doing something else and that didn't work out. And I was promoting something and they're like, you want to take over this show? Oh yeah. And I'm loving life. So I wanted to stop there because I love her message. And luckily I've lived like that my whole life for the most part. And I'm having so many fun experiences, meeting so many interesting people. And I can't agree more with what she said. Say yes and then worry about it later. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's like when you get called to the thing too. You know, I've thought about this a lot because I think about that idea, giving people the message. Go ahead, say yes. You know, first say yes, right? Well, the thing is, some people may just want to say yes because they want to escape what they're in. Yeah, oh, yes, I'll take anything.
yeah.
Yes, my way out of here. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like sort of like the thing I was going to say before is Joseph Campbell was very responsible. His seminal work is probably The Hero with a Thousand Faces, inspired George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, and the entire the Star Wars saga is basically directly from Joseph Campbell's work. But in The Power of Myth and in other things that he wrote, he talks about the concept of following your bliss. Follow that thing that moves you inside. You know, it will lead you to a happier life, and it doesn't matter what culture. I mean, he studied mythologies all over the world, and the idea that these repeated stories again and again, where the hero is called to some greater thing, and they choose to take on the greater thing or not. And as they go to take on the greater thing, they're going to like learn things, but also suffer pain. And their world is going to have to change because their world changes. Once our world always changes once we see more of the real world. I mean, is that Twain, as well as anybody else, probably Marcus Aurelius, said, travel is the greatest educator of all.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you said also, it's probably worded, I saw it worded differently, but it's the same thing. Travel is fatal to prejudice. And I love that.
exactly same sort of idea.
Yeah.
We have preconceived notions. It's like the world out there exists as a sort of like cartoon sketch of a real world. We don't really understand it until we step inside of it and we say, oh wow, so this is what it's like to sit on a bench in Amsterdam. Oh wow, so this is what it's like to cross the Atlantic Ocean or go through the Panama Canal or talk with someone that I never thought I would talk to before. And it is that aspect of being willing to put ourselves out there, and it means being willing to face our own fears, concerns, all this sort of stuff. I mean, it's very funny. I was an extremely really shy, terribly shy kid. And I'd just stand outside your door for 45 minutes before I'd knock on it, even knew I was coming over. Because I don't want to disturb you. Sorry, I don't want to disturb anybody. And so there's that whole aspect, and I think about I did try out and do different things. I did, we think about the negative experiences in a life, what we perceived as a negative experience.
Yeah.
Whether I went to 4 different high schools my first 2 years of high school. so like I have a total understanding. Parochial public.
Why was that? Why'd you go to so many high schools?
Because my dad moved us around. I actually first went away to my first high school. I saved the money so I could go away from home because my dad was a terribly horrible, abusive alcoholic, and it was really, really just terrible, horrible stuff. And I wanted to be away from it. And halfway, or not even halfway, I guess halfway through the first semester, he decided that 75 miles away from home was one thing, but he was moving the family up to the Chicago area, so
Yeah.
too far. So then I had to go to a public school,
Yeah.
and then did the same thing, earned money to go away to a private school, and then moved again and went into a public school. It was actually ended up being the best in the overall. But long and short of it, I know what it's like to be the new kid all the time.
Well, you
I
know
know
what's
what it's
funny about that? Sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say, I
no,
grew up exactly the same way. And it's funny. When I remember my 8th grade guidance counselor, they brought me in and said, "Why don't you talk to me? Why are you so shy?" And I have no idea why. And I all of a sudden, and I don't even know why and what sparked the change. But as soon as I hit 11th or 12th grade, I became who I am right now. As soon as I graduated high school, I started being in bands, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go to Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I was in radio for 5 years, and that just kept on snowballing and snowballing, trying so many different things. So for the first 15 or 16 years of my life, I was so shy, and I can't imagine why. But then after that, and what I like about your story, what you're telling me, and I'm sorry that everything you went through with your father, is that I always bring this up to people. It's like, people that have an experience like that can either pick two paths. One where they play the victim, another one where they're like, I'm not going to let that define me, and they become their own person, and then they become more of a success. And you chose the latter path, where you said, I'm not going to let this define me. Some bad things happened to me in my past, but that's not who I am. I'm not going to be a victim, and I have so much respect for that.
yeah, I think there's somebody at some point I heard say, there's only two life stories. Your life story is either a tragic struggle or a heroic battle.
I
And
love that.
that is it's it's also the aspect. I don't know why I thought about this. It's related in this sort of a way. It's like the idea of comedy. There's one definition of comedy, which is a person with little or no skills or the tools tries to optimistically accomplish a task that they totally cannot do, yet they still keep on coming back at it. And it's
Yeah.
the Laurel and Hardy. It's the comedy of whatever it is. Of somebody who Lucille Ball with the candy coming down the thing. You can't handle it, but she still tries to get to the headland and that's comedy. That's life. It's like life hands us lots of stuff, and whatever the situation is, I truly believe that we have the ability to learn from it. But it's like I was in education for 30 years, and you inevitably come up with like all sorts of wise and wonderful things about thinking in human beings and thought and all this sort of stuff. And there's a classic expression. I don't know. It's pretty familiar. Like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Have you ever heard that expression?
I
And that's
have.
sort of yep, it's a familiar one. But like the thing that I have sort of realized, and this is like with human beings, it's with students, it's with all of us. When the student is ready, they will see the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter about the teacher. It doesn't matter about anything else. It's like when we as human beings come back to something again and again, and then we suddenly like, oh, that's it. This is why, or whatever it may happen to be.
Yeah.
I think that is a big part of life, is like understanding that there are lessons there that if we just open our eyes to it, okay, and guess what? It's okay to learn a lesson.
I could picture you somewhat like a Robin Williams in Dead Poet Society. Am I correct?
Well, I love teaching. I love teaching. My favorite sort of teaching is teaching teachers. I taught the ARC program for like 11 years, and I luckily was like the only one of the ARC program. If you don't know, is the alternative route to certification. If somebody has a degree in something, math, science, and they've been working at the Hartford, and they're saying after 15 years, I'm tired of working at the Hartford. I think I'd like to teach. Like within an 8-month period, you through the state. If that's an area of need, then somebody can get certified as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you have like a cohort of, maybe 10 or 12 people who want to be math teachers, and the same sort of thing of science, same sort of thing of technology or music or art. And so each of those teachers works with those students in those areas. And because I worked with everybody on how to utilize technology as a teacher and as a tool for students and things like that, I got to work with everybody, and I loved that.
Yeah.
Because I've had lots of experience. I taught for 10 years in Bridgeport, 5 of them in the middle of P.T. Barnum Housing Project. You
Wow.
know, but 5 classes a day of 30 plus kids, 7th and 8th graders teaching science.
Wow.
It's just like, and then like, all sorts of other magnet schools, always urban school environments, all of this sort of stuff. And it's like, it's been very good, but it's like also like understanding, like there's some real core understandings about teaching, and this is once again about like, challenging and being in the world. You talk about the Robin Williams kind of teacher. I mean, like, model the type of student you want your students to be.
Mm-hmm.
If you want your student to be inquisitive, then you be inquisitive. If you want them to be passionate, then you be passionate. If
Mm-hmm.
you want them to be able to make a mistake and not worry about it and go on, then you make a mistake, laugh about it, have them correct you, and go on like a human being.
Yeah.
And teaching, I think one of the most important things that teachers can do is show children, anybody, the examples of what it's like to lead a life that is true, that is very human, and wants to learn, wants to gain knowledge, wants to understand.
Yeah.
You know,
And those
and
are the teachers that I learned the most from. Maybe a little bit unorthodox, but you could tell that they were teaching from the heart. They weren't just reading a book. They weren't just reaching a guideline of what they had to do and get through the year. They actually cared about the students. They cared about the children learning. And I still remember lessons I learned from teachers like that. Then somebody that said, "All right, open your book to page 6 and just read this paragraph, and we'll have a test on it." That I never really learned anything from. But the teacher that you just described, like yourself, those are the ones that changed my life immensely. I still remember the life lessons they taught me. And it wasn't only the facts, it was more about, as I mentioned, the life. And I love that.
yeah, well, I think that's one of the things about like a program like ARC. You'll find, I think, if you look back over like districts and Connecticut Teachers of the Years, there's numbers of them that are through the ARC program. These are people who liked the thing that they liked, math, or they liked science, or they liked music, but the environment that they were in just like wasn't a way for them to be able to share it with kids. And now they can practical world examples of, yeah, when I was working in the design department at Lego company, and I was making all these boxes, see how we would do this design, and da 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 da. And somebody, a teacher, can come in like that versus Mr. Who doesn't know what, who just learned about the lesson the day before, so he
Yeah.
could teach it to you. That's a whole different. There's like there's an expression, better to be the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage.
I like that. Never heard that one, but I like that one.
Yeah, it's a teaching expression. It's like the idea, you don't be the sage on the stage, be the guide on the side.
I
You know,
think,
and it is also about, I think there's a whole big aspect of, I just saw this little clip the other day, and I think this ties into part of the first say yes thing too.
Mhm.
Is somebody was talking about the fact that, like, what changes someone's attitude? Do you think, what is more important, to have more optimism or less negativism?
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
one is more important, to be more optimistic or to be less negative?
For me, if you're asking me, I would say be less negative.
Exactly. Being less negative takes away all these little irritating points that build up, to not be critical. We can choose to be critical. And I would tell, like, because I worked with a lot of teachers. I was a team leader and would work with teachers in training and teams. And like the idea is like, the black spot on the white wedding dress. You know what? I guarantee you can find the black spot on the white wedding dress. I don't care whose dress it is. I guarantee you'll find it. Now, is anybody really going to thank you for finding that spot?
No.
The bride gonna really like feel, oh, why, hey, that's great, Jerry. You helped me see that. Oh, yes. It's so, and then why are you doing it too? What is the reason for pointing it out?
Yep.
Is it pointing it out that it's such a huge flaw, or is it pointing out that says, "Oh, look at me, I found the blah blah blah,"
Yep.
you know?
Well, it's
And so
very
like,
sim. Oh no, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
no, no, but just that idea is that people make choices that are like that they can choose to just ignore the thing, and guess what? Probably anybody else would ignore it too, and it'll be fine and dandy. Go ahead.
No, exactly. What I wanted to say is I wanted to add to that. I said similar to you could say 50 nice things about me and one negative thing. All I'm going to remember and all I'm going to dwell on is that one negative comment you made about me. I won't even remember all the 50 nice things you said about me, but that 51st comment. So it's very similar to that. It's like, yeah, well, thanks for pointing out that. And I never even noticed it. I was feeling great. Now this is all I'm going to think about.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just sort of like, where does that come from? You know, it's like it is, but it's also, I think it is that thing that also says, well, who are you to think that you can start your own business?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you to think you can be on a radio show? Who are you to think that it is that sort of voice that stops the saying yes,
Yeah.
that stops that from going forward, that says like, oh my gosh, well, I'm going to be traveling by myself. Should I be concerned about that?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'll tell you, like the thing with when this sort of hit me and talking to her, it really, you know, it really like was sort of like eating at my brain, and the sense of like, you know, uneasiness that I'd had. And then I just suddenly decided I'd been in the Navy. I loved being at sea. I was on an aircraft carrier for over 3 years. And so I just decided I was going to just book the longest transatlantic cruise I could. And that was like, it was like nine or so days across the Atlantic. And then it stopped off in like England, and then went to Rotterdam, and then went to Oslo. And then it ended up in Amsterdam. And it ended up that you know, that the king's birthday was right then, which is a huge holiday in the Netherlands. So
Mm-hmm.
I stayed like in 4 days in Amsterdam. But so I guess like book this. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm just gonna do it. I was captivated. Like the credit card companies are foolish enough to give me enough credit to be able to do it. And and I discovered this wonderful thing called a spreadsheet, in which I was allowed, you know, just as a sideline, just as a side point, let's side point, Your Honor. Uh, it is
Approach the
yeah,
bench.
yes, exactly, to the bench. Uh, is the idea of fixed income to many people sounds like a very sort of scary thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, I'm on a fixed income, and it's like this sort of like doomsday sort of sound. And I mean, I'm lucky enough. I mean, I worked 30 years as a teacher. I put aside money, and I also worked enough jobs outside of that to have a little bit like the tiniest sort of Social Security that covers Medicare. But like so, but the thing about having a fixed income is I know what my expenses are. I know how much of my income is expendable for any amount of time out ahead. And I sat down with a spreadsheet, and I did something which I'd never ever done before. Instead of working backwards with this thing, they just put things onto it, and just like, okay, this month it was $214. It was project things forward, and they say, okay, where do I have? How long do I have to? Will it take to pay off this part of the cruise,
Mm-hmm.
or is this part of the trip? And so I basically planned out things enough ahead of time so that I knew I was going to be devoting, you know, maybe $2,000 a month towards a credit card bill, but that was paying for something that was going to cost $12,000 down the line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a time of period, a transfer, and all the rest of it. But yeah, and I was very lucky to be in that situation, and also being willing to do that. I mean, there'll be a lot of people that say, "No way, I'm not." Well, when are you going to do it then?
Exactly. I agree with you 1,000%. And I think if most people just sat back and looked at what they spent the money on, they probably spend the same amount of money on things like buying clothes, drinks, going out to eat all the time, going to see concerts, and they realize all this money you're spending there you could put all in one time and have the experience of a lifetime, learn so many new things, see so many different people, experience things that you'll never experience again instead of going to the same restaurant, the same bar, the same this. Just unfortunately, you mentioned it before. People are always afraid to get out of their comfort zone. And when I was doing motivational speaking, I used to always say, every day you should try at least one thing new. And then the next day after that, a couple days that will become commonplace. Then try something new again. A couple days after that, it'll become commonplace. I mean, it might take a little bit longer than that, but the point is, always try something different every day, and eventually, everything you was so afraid of in the past, you're like, oh, this is nothing. So I think that I love what you did when you get into it. That you just booked a cruise, traveled the world, met so many interesting people, and if you really want to, I think everybody can. I mean, not everybody, but most people can afford it if they just use their finances in the right way.
What was the other side of it too is that when I opened myself up to possibilities, then other possibilities came open. I mean, it's just like that idea. So I was coming back at a certain time, and then it just so happened that some housemates of mine, their daughter, who was on Haida Gwaii Island, which is on the far northwest, the farthest western point of Canada. It used to be Queen Charlotte Islands, but they're like fantastic, wild, temperate rainforest. Has been the home of the Haida people for like 14,000 years. It's a truly amazing area. Well, she had knew of a place that was open and needed somebody to watch it for a while there, and so I just came back and then just flew out there and stayed for a month on Haida Gwaii, like a place that like is totally amazing. And I never even thought about like doing that. And then since I said, okay, I'm on the west, I'm all the way over here. I have a friend in Alaska, and then she let me like live in her little tiny like rental house and use her truck while she stayed with her boyfriend and used his truck. And it was just like, it was like, opening yourself up to possibilities. And at the exact same time, it's like, by doing that, here I arranged for, and I'm talking about all these things as after they'd happened, but like when I did all this planning for this stuff, I did a whole bunch of planning. And one of the downsides of doing a like first saying yes to stuff is the downside or upside is like telling other people what you're saying yes to before you get into it deeply. I made a bunch of plans, and unfortunately, I didn't talk to my family about a lot of those plans. As a matter of fact, I made a bunch of them, and I didn't talk to them at all about them before I let them know about it. And I have 4 daughters who I love very much and who love me very much, but it was very much a shock to them. And I have to very honestly know that that was something I was not expecting at all, because I was getting into the saying yes part of things.
Yeah.
And I was allowing my own enthusiasm for like this idea of something that was breaking me out of the malaise of the pandemic and all the things that I was feeling at that point into something else. And so like the cost outside of the cost of money is like the cost of understanding that, like, how people relate to you and how you need to relate to other people and communicate what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing ahead of time really makes a big difference.
Yeah. See, I could say if my parents did what you did, I would go for it, experience everything, have the time in your life. I would be so much for that, because unfortunately, they got tied down when they had 3 kids, and then they went to the Cape, but then they got 8 dogs, and they have the way they live their life is more of just like the normal, where let's go to, now they're retired, but even retired, like, well, we can't really do this, we can't do that. And I would love for them to do something that you did, because I want them, they hear all the stories of all the different things I've done. Like, I've been on only 1 cruise so far, but that's one of the first of many. I went to Bermuda over the summer and I loved it. And they love hearing all these stories that I do. I said, you would love to do these things, and they're always like, oh, I'm too old. I was like, no, you're not too old. I would love for them to get up and just go and do something like that, because I think it would change their whole outlook on life. I know it would.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the other aspect about this, like, too, I mean, I did all this stuff solo,
Yeah.
so like, and what I haven't talked about is that, like, almost right from the beginning, little my back and started hurting me more, my legs started hurting me more, a lot of sciatic stuff.
Yeah.
And all, and so that by midway through, my surgeon had decided that I needed to have spinal surgery.
Wait, this was in the middle of the cruise?
But it was so like so the first part of the cruise, I go to Amsterdam, I go back to Haida Gwaii, I go to Alaska, and then I come back to Connecticut. two of my daughters, my twins, have graduations, and then shortly within a period after that, I my pain had been increasing so much, and the doctor had thought I might just need some injections, so he sent me to a pain person. And then on a Friday night, the surgeon contacts me, his office, and says, "We want you to come in on Monday morning." Which, whenever your doctor tells you to come in early, it's not because they're saying, "Hey, your results are so good. We just got to show you how great they are." On that Thursday, I had a double laminectomy, which is spinal
Ooh,
shaving lamina and back to release pressure. It was fantastic though, because it released my legs. Were in lots and lots and lots of pain. I mean, that was one of the tough parts about it. I was in some beautiful places, but I couldn't really do the hour walk to the base of the glacier to
yeah.
actually experience the glacier. You know, it was a whole variety of aspects of that, and so uh, that pain stopped immediately. But I'd already booked a whole a whole Panama Canal thing, all this stuff on the other side that I didn't know I was going to have this pain. Uh, but after 2 weeks of recuperation, I flew out to Los Angeles and got wheeled on a wheelchair onto the cruise ship. And I just would like to say to anyone out there recuperating, whatever your age, boys, girls, men, women, and children of all ages, if you're recuperating from something, a cruise ship is a great place to recuperate.
Hmm.
They will serve you food to your room if you wish it, but there's tons of great stuff.
Oh,
You
I
don't have to
loved it.
all the day-to-day worries. You don't have to think about anything. The gym is just like 3 minutes away from wherever you are on the ship. You have swimming pools and hot tubs. I mean, and music, live music, and interesting people. And it's just like that. So I basically had like 34 days then from
Wow.
LA through the Panama Canal, up to Aruba, Bermuda, and then on to
Barcelona. Okay, get the-
Barcelona. And then once again, I left myself open. A friend of mine is teaching in Barcelona for 2 years. I was able to stay at his place for a month.
I love it.
And it was and once again it was great to stay at the place, but once again it was 5 stories up walking up.
Oh. But you know what I want to say before you get into the next part? I want to say what you mentioned about what I love about the cruise is that you're put on a boat with people you might never ever associate with, but not one person I saw was in a bad mood. Everybody had a great time. Everybody got along from what I could see, and everybody put their differences aside or what maybe because I'm sure if some of these people I could tell if they were in the quote unquote real world back at home, they were like, I hate this person. You know, they don't really know the person, but on the ship, everybody's having a great time. Everybody's dancing. Like you said, there's bands every night. There's tons of food. If you like alcohol, there's tons of alcohol. It's just a fun time. And there's something for all ages and something for everybody. And I just love the fact that you get a chance to meet this eclectic group and everybody gets along. And there's another, did you ever hear of a guy named Henry Rollins? He
Yes, I have heard of Henry
Yeah.
Rollins.
Well, for people who don't know, he started off as the punk lead singer. I mean, sorry, lead singer of the punk band Black Flag, and then he sort of started doing spoken word. Then he did. He wrote books, came out with his own book company, started acting in movies. But I like what he does now. And the reason I'm bringing him up is that he really just focuses on the spoken word. And I see him every time he comes into the area. But he says he travels all over the world, wherever he goes. Whenever somebody tells me I can't go, that's where I go. He's been to North Korea, China, all these different places where Iran, Iraq, and he said the first thing he'll do is say, "Hey, what are you doing here in Iraq?" He goes, "I came to meet you," and he shakes your hand. He goes, "The people are the nicest people in the world." He goes, "It's the leaders that have the problem." He goes, "The people are all the same. I get along with everybody," and he goes, "It opened up my mind." And basically, he talks about what Twain said. Travel is fatal to prejudice. He goes, "So many people are like, oh my god, what I saw in the news. That's the way it has to be." He goes, no, experience it for yourself and find out what it's really like. You can't just sit there on your couch saying, "Oh, that's no good. That's horrible." And that's what I love. Like you have that same mentality, and you're doing that right now.
Oh, absolutely. And the points about also that you are also an example for other people to see in the world of what an American is like, of what we are, and that was one of the things I truly realized. I mean, among our own people, I mean, obviously, cruise ship, the crowd tends to be more of a white crowd, more affluent, but there are lots of, depending on the cruise line, there are much more wider ranging
Yeah.
uh, cruise ships to a whole bunch of different demographics of people and families and things like that. And it was great. I went on 3 different cruise lines, and it was real interesting to meet the different types of passengers on them.
Hmm.
And sitting down at a table, one of the things I'd say to anybody, and I don't know how we could do this out in the real non-cruise world, but they have something called like open dining or open,
Yeah.
so that the shared table, that's what it is. And so you go and you have like basically 6 different people, a couple of couples, but usually a couple of single people as well. And you come from different areas. You've all decided to eat dinner together.
Hmm.
And so invariably people introduce themselves, talk about where they're from, conversations happen. And it was always very interesting because whether they were from Australia or from England, or whether from Texas or California or Florida or an Australian via Missouri, you know,
Yeah.
that there would have different perspectives on whatever the conversation was.
Hmm.
And being a teacher and working in urban populations, I have some pretty clear ideas of the difficulties that families have and how poverty impacts so much related to what happens and the qualities of education and a whole variety of things that perhaps some people would sort of think of who knows, maybe even might be considered liberal. And so it was I was having a conversation with a couple of couples, and one was from California, the one was from Nevada, and they very definitely had certain political perspectives that were perhaps what one might normally consider diametrically opposed. But you were able to sit there and have a conversation and talk about that and share like some of my real experiences of like working with real teachers, real families, and the change that occurs over time, or how gun violence has impacted way too many kids in America. And I mean, it's so sad. But just even talk about that, and so the next day, you invariably see people on the ship. And the next day, I saw this one woman who I'd had dinner with the night before, and she always wore suits everywhere. She was very pristine, wonderful, just wonderful, wonderful woman. And she came over to me and said, "You know what? I want to say to you, if there was more teachers like you, there wouldn't be big problems in this world." It's like,
I love it.
exactly, exactly, because it's like, yes, there are like thousands and thousands of teachers just like me that care just the same way. They have the exact same, you know, demonstrating their enthusiasm for life and being a good person with the people that they're with. It's those sort of things. And the other aspect of like, you know, people British, more than one person, British couple would say something like, "You aren't a typical American, are you?" Well, yeah, sort of a, yeah. Or I'd say I'm a such and such American, and but also understanding, like I said, that I on a open bus in London, going on the hop on hop off tour, which I advise everybody to do. If you're in any other city, just go on a hop on hop off, but just stay on. And then if you want to hop off later, hop off the second time around. But it's a great way to get a see of a place. But there was a English family, and they're on holiday, and 2 boys and mom and dad, and they're all about this. And when the one boy found out I was from America, he said, uh, "Do do they really have a lot of guns in America?"
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wow, this is
Yep.
the first thing that this kid thinks of when he thinks of our country.
Yep.
And like, and having to talk about that idea, and it's so interesting because uh, we we can look at different people. I think I might have shared the story, like being in It was Rotterdam,
Mhm.
uh, and was sitting on a park bench, and there was a African man who was sitting next to me, and he was a Ugandan, and we were talking for a little bit, and so he says, so you like Biden, huh? You like Biden? And I said, well, yeah, yeah, I think I sort of do
Yeah.
like Biden, the choice, It's like I like Trump, I like Trump. I said, oh, really? Why do you like Trump? He says Biden get in war. Biden go in war. Trump would not go in war. Trump would not go in war. I am from Uganda.
Yeah.
My country in war. My brother died in war. My family moved to war. I'm here because of war.
Hmm.
I hate war. And then to really understand a worldview that is one that we are privileged enough not to have to have.
Yeah.
To live in a country, it is better to live in a. It may feel better to live in peace under a dictator than it does at war under a democracy.
Yep. Well, you know what I like about you is that just like you, I like Biden. I think he's done a great job. I think he doesn't get half the credit for the things that he's done and still continues to. But that's another podcast. The reason I bring that up is that people say the same thing to me about people that like Trump, and we just get into debates, not arguments, not fights, not screaming, yelling. They're like, you know why I love talking to you, Rich? Because I can have a conversation with you and you don't get mad. I said, why should I get mad? You have your opinion, I have my opinion. And I like the fact that even like you said, people that you're diametrically opposed to, you can listen to them instead of just shouting them down and say, well, why do you like them? And then you find out deeper when they start talking that like, well, it's because of I had family that was killed in war. And since when Biden was in office, we happened to be in a war. And you realize that, all right, now I'm starting to understand a little bit more why they think the way they do. If they're not just some ignorant person that doesn't have a brain and just watches Fox News and just repeats what they're reading on the scroll in the bottom of the screen. They actually have some thought behind it. So I like the fact that you're like that and I'm like that too. And I I think the Dalai Lama takes credit for this, or they give him credit for this. It's like when you talk, all you hear is what you know. When you listen, you actually learn something. And I think that you have that mentality. I know I do. And I think everyone should do that. As that guy said, whoever said that to you, it's like, you're not like most Americans. Because unfortunately, most Americans want to be right and will never ever change their mind. They're set in their ways. And I'm not saying everybody. I'm just saying a lot of people already have their mind made up and nothing will ever change it. They don't want to hear anything that goes against what they believe.
Well, it's just like a friend of mine was pointing out something about this whole social media sort of universe of commentary of postings, and then tags and so on, people's comments about things, with vitriol. And the thing is, nowadays, people, if I put a posting up there and you disagreed with it,
Mhm.
I would, and you were like, why is Jerry saying that? I
Yeah.
would hope that maybe you would call me and
Mhm.
say, Jerry, I'm curious about that posting. What
Yeah.
was it about? Versus turning me into, what, the latest version of narcissist, the latest version of abuser, the latest version of someone who takes power from other people, the latest version of whatever it is. Now they can put all this stuff out there. They don't have to worry about any blowback. They don't, because they can just like put it out there and feel totally assured in what they're saying, because it's so righteous in words right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And no doubt somebody will put a couple of likes by their thing so that they'll even feel better about it.
Yeah.
And it's that aspect of, but they never will have an actual conversation with the person past terrible exchanges back and forth, where if you attack somebody in three directions, even if your point is right at some way, it still sucked, because how can someone not deal with the other three attacks? How can they not want to, you know, do whatever? Or even so much as the idea is, if you engage someone, it almost legitimizes the attack.
Yep. So I want to give you an example of that because I love this conversation. It was between Phil Donahue and he was on Bill O'Reilly's show years ago.
Yes.
And he made a comment saying that the biggest cowards are the politicians that are a thousand throwing their other people's children into war for no reason. And Bill O'Reilly screaming, "My nephew was in the military. You can't say it." He's screaming and yelling. So Phil Donahue, as calm as could be, quiet, just sat back and said, "Just because you're loud doesn't mean you're right." And he got even more mad. He goes, "Just because you're loud doesn't mean you're right." And I love that line, because usually when people are loud and they're screaming and they're just attacking you, they have nothing to back it up. They're just angry, and then they have no facts behind them. I'm going from personal experience, because if
Please.
say I post something online, I never get into arguments with people I know. It's since I'm public, I get in fights. Who are you? Why are you on my page? If you don't agree with me, just keep scrolling. I don't even know why you're arguing with me. It was funny. This happened several times, and I just kept saying, if you don't like what you see, just you don't have to stop and read it. It's funny. People just love, not everybody. Like I said, sometimes I'm generalizing a little bit, but there's some
Of
people
course.
that just argue and just they want to start a fight with you, and really, we can have a difference of opinion and just move on.
And guess what? And people can even post things that are stupid on second consideration. But
Yeah,
and then to be able to give grace to not turn something into attack, but just like to. So did you really mean to say da da da? Oh, no, no,
exactly.
no, 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 no. I did not mean to compare mothers to dogs. I know. It was not what I was saying.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean that.
Yeah. That's why I
Oh,
always say. I say sometimes sarcasm does not translate well in print.
yeah. And this like the first say yes idea is like talking to somebody like the same sort of idea with a business, and she wanted to start a business and was very and she had always been like very involved in her family and taking care of everybody else's needs and all this. And it's like she's trying to explain to one of her kids about this, like the need, like I always had to like take care of everybody else, and I'm just like able to do this thing on my own. This just I don't have to worry about anybody or anything else. And the kid is like, hey, we never asked you to have us. It's like they internalize
Yeah.
the thing as about being about them, when in reality, no, this is about this person's life decisions. And I
Mhm.
mean, and whatever age somebody is, when you sort of make a choice, a very bold choice, and it's easier to make bold choices when you're, even though it seems like they're the most timid about it right now, it is easier to make bold choices when you're young than when you're older.
Yeah.
Yeah, that there are all sorts of encumbrances that come with age, and not to mention just being scared. There's a whole bunch of things that are related to that. The mistakes that you make and use are pretty easily repaired over time.
I
The
think what's funny is not even like with the health situation, but I think for most people don't care about what other people think when they're really young or when they're really old. That age in between, that's when sometimes, like for me, I can really care less. I love what I do. I'm very confident in myself. I love I can really care less what other people think. But there's so many people that are like my age and maybe like between 20 and 50 where they get that, oh my God, is everybody thinking this? Like, who cares what they think? Just do what if it's not hurting anybody and it's not affecting anybody else's life in a negative way, and you're able to continue working and paying the bills, why can't you just do this? You're never too old to do something. But I think that I agree with you that the best time to do it is when you're young. But I think sometimes people get that feeling, they're always so worried, like I have to do what's expected of me. No, do what you think is best for you. Again, if it's not hurting anybody else and it's not affecting your job and other things that responsibilities that get in the way.
well, that's the idea too. Is like thinking about it from the other extreme of retirement. I know that our society, as much as any other, you are what your job is.
Oh
What
yeah.
you do is what you are. And so when people have a career, and whether that career is working in the home with children, whether that career is working with a business or a factory or whatever all the various jobs that people have, when they reach a certain point, some people they they so identify with their job that they like hang on to it forever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that Charlie the roofer, 57 years Charlie's been roofing.
Yeah.
Really? You didn't want to devote any of that of your life to yourself versus to your job. You didn't want to spend any of your life just for you. I mean, I've known at least a couple different people that retired, and then within like a month they had a heart attack and died. One of them was hanging a picture over their bed in their bedroom, and it's like you spent your entire life giving it to a business, to a job, to something.
Well, I want to
And
give an example of that before you go on. There's this one guy that was somebody I know, and he was so frugal with money, didn't want to do anything, saved it, saved it, saved it. He got sick. All that money when he went into medical bills, that ran out. Then Medicare paid for everything. I was talking to his son and says, like, I just wish he enjoyed his life. I wish he did something fun instead of just saving the money, put it underneath the bed, worrying that this is going to happen. Worry about that. He goes, he never did anything. And basically all that money just was gone in several months from all the medical bills. So I agree with you. It's just enjoy life while you can. I love that message.
oh, absolutely. I mean, but like the other side of this is like when you come into retire. I mean, when we're younger, we're willing to try lots of different things because we think life is eternal.
Mm-hmm.
So anything could the next thing could be the next big thing. Skiing, yeah, skiing. Oh no, skiing sort of sucks. Oh yeah, ping pong, yeah, ping pong. Oh no. You know, whatever. We try a million different things,
Yeah.
and that like as you age and when you're older, you tend to be generally happier because you already know the things that you're not willing to try anymore. You know, I'm going to do the things that I like to do that make me happy, which sort of makes sense. You know,
Yeah.
but at the exact same time, it can get you stuck into not trying anything new. Can get you stuck into a sort of like mindset that doesn't really tell your system that you want to grow some more. I mean, I really do believe in that idea that like our own sense of vitality of our life, that our own sense of being in the world and contributing and being active in it and thinking is something that like communicates to ourselves about how we can be in this world and energizes us. It's like
Yeah.
you live longer because you have a reason to live. You know, it's like they've done studies of traditional cultures with traditional mothers who have these very important roles around holidays, you know, Chinese holidays, Jewish holidays, things like this. And what they find is that there's an increase in the deaths after the holidays. It's like grandma made it to make that last chicken soup, to do that last kishka, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then she powered on through that, and then that was it. She didn't have a purpose anymore. And the same thing, it's like if you identified yourself as only your job, if you suddenly don't have that job, then where is your life energy at? Where is your focus of saying, I have a reason to exist? I have a reason to be.
Yeah.
And that's why I say you go back to those things that you had enthusiasms with in your youth. Before we get into a career, before we get into a family, we have all these things. We put some of them on pause. Pause. No more band practice. Oh, I'm sorry, just can't do it, guys.
Yeah.
No more whatever. Oh man, I love the comedy troupe, but I just can't do it anymore. And then there, 30 years later, 25 years later, you're sitting, you're coming into retirement and saying, oh, what am I going to do? Oh, I know. Take it off pause.
Mm-hmm.
You were enthusiastic about that thing. I guarantee you,
Yeah.
you will be enthusiastic about that thing again.
I always say that I think everybody needs a job to survive, but they also need some kind of hobby, some kind of passion. You can't just, I mean, you can, but it's just not going to be living. I work to live. I don't live to work. Where I have a full-time job and I love my job, but I have so many extracurricular activities, and it's all about, for me, it's all about time management. And I definitely make time for all different things I want to do. And I think so many people, as you said a little while ago, that people use that something as an excuse. Oh, I don't have time for this. Oh, I can't do that. Or I don't have the money. And I want to give you an example of, I used to work in the Southbury area, Heritage Village. It's a retirement village. And people used to come into where I work, and they were, I'm not even exaggerating, they were 97, 98. One person was 101 years old. I said, what are they having to water here? Then I found out, I'm sure you know who Victor Borga is.
Absolutely.
Right. I didn't realize this. I just found out when I was telling this story to my father. My father said, well, you know, your grandmother used to work for him. I said, no, I had no idea. He was and definitely a musician, but he was sort of like in a comedic way, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. But he's a highly trained pianist.
Yeah.
And a composer, comedian, actor in European cinema.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason I bring him up was that in the Southbury area, he used to live in the area. So when he left, he created a playhouse for them. He created all these different events for them. So these people would come into where I work and say, "Oh man, Rich, you had to come in '70s night. I know you love the '70s. Oh, Rich, it's '50s night. Come on, let's go to the sock hop." These are people in their '90s, and instead of just being placed in a nursing home watching TV all day, they were out dancing, they were out playing bingo, just getting along, socializing. That was the biggest thing. People socialized. And I remember somebody came in and they were telling me about when Roosevelt was president. It wasn't FDR, it was Theodore. So I love talking to these people, but that kept them young because they had passion. They pushed the pause button. Stopped the pause button, and they continued with life after they retired. And they lived for a long time in that area for that one reason, because they didn't just give up and say, okay, well, my job is my life. They're like, you know what? Now I want to get back to this and I want to have fun.
Absolutely. I think that's like one of the things that is good about the teaching profession in particular, is because it keeps you in contact with youth all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you like kids, that is. I mean, there are some teachers who reach a certain point and you're not even certain, do you really like kids? Are you really, 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 really you like kids? It doesn't seem like you do.
That's
But
funny.
if you like kids, I mean, like, some of the most youthful people you can find is like, the kindergarten teacher who's been teaching for 35 years. I mean, they're just like so energetic and so positive and so much great energy. But like, once again, I think like in a teacher, when I would teach all of these people that wanted to become teachers, the first slide that I would have on my presentation was that rarely will the enthusiasm of the student exceed the enthusiasm of the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
If it does, you're doing your job right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? You can't. A student is not going to be enthusiastic about something if you're not enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
Why should they be interested if you aren't? And so that's what you were going back to the teachers you were talking about, these people that teach by rote. And I mean, there was a whole school of thought after the baby boom happened. There was a shortage of teachers. And so what happened is the textbook companies in the 60s, the late 50s, early 60s, and for a much longer amount of time, because they gained this sort of control, they said, we will write a textbook that anybody can teach from.
Mm-hmm.
We'll make a teacher's edition. So it doesn't, you don't even need to know the subject area. You'll be able to teach this. So you can have a teacher sit in any class and they'll be able to teach math or geometry or art or history or science or social studies. Doesn't make any difference. They'll have the teacher's edition. And so that's what we did. We had a bunch of teachers that were like that.
Oh, that's
And
funny.
yeah, and I think it is that, like, being able to get back away from that. I mean, I was lucky enough that I worked in magnet schools where were able to make some very interesting curriculums. But like, no matter where you are, you can make the teaching so much more for the students. Once again, creating lessons for them to learn to discover what the lesson is. You know, creating situations like that. And the enthusiasm is a big part of it. You be excited about what you're teaching.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. And as
Oh,
I mentioned before, I said those are the teachers. I still remember their lessons, and I learned a lot more than just the facts. I learned a lot of life lessons, and like you said, the teachers with passion. Those are the ones that will always stick with me. And I did have teachers that you just mentioned. One's like, open your textbook to page 12. Rich,
yeah.
what is that? Rich, you read paragraph one. Lana, you read paragraph two, and this is on and on. And nothing ever stuck when they were doing that because I was just basically reading. It wasn't sticking to me. I wasn't comprehending anything because I really didn't care because it was just so boring. But when the teacher was, all right, so what's this? And they'll like sort of act things out, like, all right, let's get up in front of the class, let's do this, and just got everybody involved. It was fun, and that's what made me learn so much more. And so I'm glad. And what I want to bring up about you is that I always bring this up. I want your opinion on this. I always say I think the toughest years for a teacher would be 8th and 9th grade because that's when peer pressure is the hardest. And I think the kids try to act cool and they can't be nice to a teacher because it's not cool to be nice to a teacher. When they're young, they're like, they don't really know any better. When they're older, they're a little bit more mature and they're getting ready for college. But those years, which you taught, I think would always be the toughest. Am I correct?
Uh, you know, it really is. There is so much about that's right, but it's, it's like the same thing of like middle schoolers. Middle schoolers can be so mean to each other.
Yeah.
They can be terribly. I mean, and there's a reason why all those middle school movies are like that. Because that's, and you ask people about their most traumatic school years, and they almost invariably say their middle school years.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I love teaching middle school. I love teaching, and the teachers who teach middle school are a very different sort of breed of teachers. Because invariably they're part middle schoolers themselves. I mean, this sort of gets back to my aspect of the other aspects I think about is like inside of me when you're talking about being older and trying things, or being being tuned into new stuff. The people who are 90 years old and listening to music that was way beyond their quote unquote generation.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, inside of me there are two Jerrys. There's a 12-year-old Jerry who's totally optimistic and enthusiastic about everything, and everything's exciting, and everything's a great connected something or the other, and it's all like really, so stimulating and so intense. And then there's like the 27-year-old Jerry that thinks he actually understands something in the world, and is like tuned into the culture of the world, and so slides along at that age level, even though the outer casing is certainly belies the inner feeling. And I mean, that's it. I mean, like, you ask people, what do you feel like inside?
Yeah.
Not your, what do you feel like inside? And the people who say like, I don't know, 57. Oh God. All right. Goodbye. Thank you.
Yeah.
See you later.
Well, you want to know what's funny about that is right now I'm 55. I'll be 56 in a couple months. But people say all right. I work with 20-year-olds, and they're like,
Yeah.
I can never keep up with you, man. You tire me out. I said, you're half my age. I get that all the time. People are like, man, if I could bottle your energy, I'd be a millionaire. It's like, I feel better than I've ever felt. And I just have so much fun. Like, I'll give you an example. If you go on my Facebook page, you'll see it. I went to a Carpenters tribute band, and it was at the Seven Angels Theater. I got up, started dancing, got the whole crowd going. People like during intermission, was that you? Like, if you get up again, I want to get up with you, because they were waiting for me to start the crowd again. So that's just how I am. Like on the cruise ship, it was this funny thing was the same group, Carpenters. I said I love the Carpenters, and they had a Carpenters night. So I got up, started dancing, and the band goes, "Can you come to every show that we're at?" I love the way, and people are saying, "Are you a professional cruiser? Are you hired to do that?" And I said, "No, I'm just love doing it." But I just always had a lot of energy. I never let quote unquote age, to me it's just a number, and I could really care less. I mean, I still have the mentality where, yeah, I have a lot of responsibilities, but I can still have fun, and I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm not going to worry about like, oh, I'm too old for this. No, I'm not.
Well, that's the whole thing too. Is I mean, being able to be comfortable enough within yourself to be able to do that. That's why I always love dancing right up close to the band. I always like to
Yeah.
be like right close, because then I can't see anybody's reaction behind me, so I don't care.
Well, the thing with that is most people, like, I can give you an example. Like my past girlfriends that have gone with me said, "Oh my God, how can you do that? Everybody's looking at us." But then, as soon as the music would stop, the band would be like, "Thank you so much. We really loved that." And then one time, a couple came up to my girlfriend when I went to the bathroom during intermission. He goes, "I had more fun watching your boyfriend or husband than I did watching the show. He is so entertaining." So most people who think that they are being watched. Most people wish they could do what you and I are doing. They could be up there dancing, and they had the nerve to do it. But most people are like, "Oh, everybody's gonna be looking at me. I don't want everybody to think I'm crazy." So who cares? Just have fun. So I think that a lot of people want to be doing that, but they're more reserved because they're worried about what other people are gonna say.
Yeah, well, that's like the social convention, and
Yeah,
all the, you, uh, and 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 absolutely, I'm not, as I said, I was a very 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 shy person,
yeah.
and I and so a lot of that was just like, overcoming those things bit by bit and making the choices too, and still, still there are situations, and it's so funny because I know there was some people that like, you're shy, Jerry, you're shy,
Oh
no,
yeah.
no. Yeah, and it's like, no, 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 no. Depends on the situation, depends on the thing. I can just as much, turtle as anybody else can.
Yeah, yeah. For
Uh,
me, it's not really shyness. Sometimes I just had I have moments where I just don't feel like talking to anybody. I just don't feel like even interacting. But it's not for me. It's not shy anymore. But I was just like you, as I mentioned, up until about ninth or 10th grade. I don't know why, but I'm so glad that ended because I would have missed out on so much if I continued that way of living.
well, I think definitely I got involved in theater in the last half of my or the last portion of my sophomore year at a school called Morton East in Cicero, Illinois, and it had 4,000 students in the school.
Oh wow.
Gigantic school, but it also meant it had a gigantic theater that had been built during the WPA. It had like five different teachers on the theater department. So it was like it was really excellent, and so uh, it was a great place to. The great thing about people lots of times, and I've gone to small schools too. When I lived in Southern Illinois, I mean, I went to a class of 22 was the eighth grade class, and when they graduated, I was at the other school. My graduating class at Morton East was 978 kids. The graduating class at Odin Elementary Township High School was 18.
Wow.
And so, like, to have that sort of extremity of experience,
Yeah.
hey, a gigantic school in lots of ways is so much better because you have a better chance of finding your group, finding
Mhm.
your niche, because there's more people. The more people there are, the bigger. I mean, that's why it's so unusual when like so many parts of America that have very sparse populations, they are so intense about certain issues, and it's basically because they don't have the population density to have those issues be of importance to them.
Mhm.
You know, it's sort of, and I don't know how do you get people to empathize in either direction, in either direction,
Yeah.
with, with what it's like to not have no medical facilities for a 3 hour drive away from where you are.
Mhm.
Empathize with that side of living out in the rural areas. To you know, needing understanding that within a population of 7.5 million people, there are going to be a certain number of those people are going to be trans people. There's going to be a certain number of those people that are going to be gay people.
Yep.
There's going to be a number of those people that are going to be of all sorts of different ethnicities, groups, and orientations. And it's because you have 7.5 million of them there to all together. And
Mhm.
so that means something.
Yeah, no,
You have to
exactly.
look at those issues. You can't, the idea of having your gun once your buddy's like 8 miles away or whatever, and say like your gun density issue is not really that big. Once again, 7 million people. If everybody's got a gun, we got problems.
Hmm. Oh yeah, no, definitely. I agree with that 1,000%. And it's funny because you mentioned sort of like the way different people think, and I always bring that up. Like when somebody says, "Oh my God, my life is so bad," this and that, I said, "All right, just look at it this way. Like I always bring this story up. So my brother's wife had pancreatic cancer she got it March of 2020, right after COVID hit, and she just died in July. So she had it for almost 3.5 years. So whenever somebody complains about something, I said, I bet you I wish my brother's wife when she was still alive. I bet you she wishes she had that problem. I said, I always try to look at everything in perspective. I mean, sure, things bother you at the time, but for the most part, if you take a step back, look at life is not that bad. Life is really not that hard. It's more what you make of it and the way you think.
Absolutely.
Oh, and we lost you, and you're back.
Sorry. It is. It is that there's there's an old joke about the optimist and the pessimist twins. Do you know this one?
No, I never heard it.
The scientist finds this little babies. That's one's a total optimist, and one's a total pessimist. And so the scientist takes the first little twin baby and puts the baby in a room full of toys, every kind of toy you possibly imagine, every possible toy you can imagine. He goes and he puts the little pessimistic twin in that room, and then he takes the other little twin, the little optimist, and he puts him in a room full of horse shit all the way up to his belly button, and he just throws him in there, and then he shuts the door and leaves them both in there for an hour. This is high level science, by the way. It may have been Yale. I'm not, but in any case, so he comes back after an hour, and he looks in the room and looks in the room and sees the little pessimist, and the little pessimist is just like sitting on the side, just like doing nothing, not playing with anything. And so the scientist goes in there and says, "Hey, kid, what's up? You got all these toys, and you're not playing with anything." Uh, you know, if I play with something, it's probably going to break anyway. Or somebody's going to come and take it away from me, I don't know, like, do these things have germs on them? And I'm just like, it's just like, who's been playing with these before? And it's like, oh, okay, okay. So no matter what, they can work. Okay, got it.
Yep.
Go, looks in the room with the little optimist, and the little optimist is just like throwing horseshit into the air and laughing and giggling and just like having a great old time. Just, and then the just goes in and is like wipes the shit off the kid's face and says, "Kid, yeah, you're in all this horseshit. Why are you so happy?" And the kid goes, "With all this horseshit, I know there's gonna be a pony under here someplace." And
That is
friends
funny.
yes, friends of mine, that used to be like our code word for having optimism
Yes.
in a situation. And ask you how it's going. "Oh, I'm looking for the pony, just looking for the pony," and that would be it. And I mean, and that is once again our perspective on the world. How do we choose to look at this thing that is here before us?
Mm-hmm.
That cut in front of me because they're an asshole who doesn't care at all about anything, or did they cut in front of me because they're rushing to get to the hospital before their grandmother dies?
Yeah.
We paint this whole story that we will never get the information on. So why not paint a better story?
Mm-hmm.
And I think once again, you go and you look at the world and you put yourself in different situations. I mean, I had a lot of time by myself, thinking by myself, especially the cruise back across the Atlantic for the last part. It was terribly rough seas for like 7 or 8 days straight, and I was in the bow of the ship. And I'd been in the Navy, I'd experienced rough seas before. But the thing about rough seas in that situation is it's relentless. It isn't like it just goes for like a ride at the roller coaster for only like 3 minutes or something. It's hour after hour after hour after hour after hour after hour after hour.
Yeah.
And so it puts you in a different physiological space, puts you in a different headspace, and so once again, learning from those sort of experiences, having the time to think about when I fell in love with being at sea. I was on an aircraft carrier, and the place where I slept was in a room with 127 other guys, and we all slept in basically a coffin with the opening mounted sideways, because you had a curtain on the left or right hand side, and it was closed off in every other direction, and you had a little tiny vent that would like puff air out of you, and you had this little harsh white fluorescent light, and that was your entire world. That was your sleeping space. That was it, and everything else was shared with 5,000 other guys. When I came back on this last cruise, I was in a berthing compartment that, because I didn't know my condition at the time when I booked it, was handicapped accessible. So it was large and wide and had a full shower
Yeah.
with the wonderful seating and wands of water, and it had a little coffee thing, and and a view. It actually even had a view out the front. It was just like my God, this is probably bigger than the admiral's compartment when I was on the carrier.
So what did
And
you actually do on the carrier? The reason I'm asking is
uh,
my brother
well,
was a fighter pilot in the Navy, and he was on an aircraft carrier for years at a time. Like when he was using Iraq for like first it was 6 months and 8 months and 12 months. And he'd be on the aircraft carrier landing planes.
I'll tell you what. If I would have been in then, still he would have been landing on top of me.
Oh,
My berthing compartment was 18 inches underneath the flight deck, and we would hear the
yep.
of takeoff of the cable getting dragged back, and all these sorts of things that were related to sound. I was very, very lucky. I was in a division of approximately 150 people. It was called Operations Electronics.
Mm-hmm.
So it was basically the smartest people in the entire ship. It was all the data systems, electronics warfare, radar, communications, inertial navigation, ship's TV and radio station. Everybody who knew, and so we're talking 1976 to 1980s. These were these were your progenitor geeks. These are the people that were playing with hexadecimal dice before anybody else knew about them. You know, it's like
Yeah.
eh, they were very, very smart group of people, and the thing was, even within that group, it was subdivided. Like on the ship, you're sort of divided into divisions, like what sort of your jobs are. So you tend to sleep with machinist mates or airedales, you know, the people that work on the air deck.
Mm-hmm.
And operational electronics, uh, there were like within that there was radar, there was communication. So it was like 22 guys for radar, 18 people for electronics, for you know this thing, that thing, and you usually were only restricted to be able to go to the places that you had access to because there were secret spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very lucky because I was what was called operations electronics test equipment. And everybody needed test equipment. So I got to go to every single place on the ship. I got to meet all these different sort of people and befriend all these different really smart people. And it was like an aspect of myself that like uh, I mean, it honed up that aspect of myself as the ability to be able to sort of like talk to people and you know discuss ideas. And I think it's so important to be exposed to a lot of things. The military, you know, the military is a very tough experience.
Mm-hmm.
I saw people in their absolute worst.
Yeah.
You know, you're with people 24 hours a day for months on end, and you know, and you have all the different power structures. And I can't even imagine what it's like today now with a mixed gender military.
Yeah.
You know, it creates all. I mean, even the amounts of like communication that happens. And you know, I don't want to go off on this too much of an idea, but like when I compare, like when I was in the military, the thing that attracted me to the sea, the differences, I saw these sort of differences as well. You know, we had mail call. You couldn't call somebody on a cell phone.
Oh yeah.
You know, you couldn't voice message, you couldn't Zoom, you couldn't Skype your baby.
Yeah.
So if you and I had a problem on the ship, you and I had to work the problem out. I couldn't go to you and have somebody say, "Oh, they were just being mean to you."
Yeah. Well,
No,
I'm glad you brought that up because I was talking to somebody who's going into the army, and he was telling me, and I said, I hope it's not like this for all branches, and I wish it wasn't like this in the army, where if you feel like you're being mistreated, you can go to a safe place. I said, what? They're training warriors. They're worried about like you're getting your feelings hurt, and there's this. It's sad.
yeah, well, that's the aspect of it. I think once again, getting back to you know perhaps some aspects of culture is like people don't talk to each other about what the issue is. They
Mm-hmm.
would rather post some scathing comment and avoid any sort of real, you know, really having to like, oh, whoa, maybe I misinterpreted that, or maybe I'm opening my mind to you know another way of looking at this problem or this situation. I
Yeah.
mean, I would tell kids like there are no, you know, I can only come up with the answers that I can come up with. I can't come up with the answers that you can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Because your mind, your experience is different than my mind and my experience. So if I hold on to a problem and I only keep it in my own head, I will only have a limited set of answers. If I share my problem with somebody else, immediately I increase the possibility that it will be solved because I have opened it up to other possible answers and other considerations.
Mm-hmm.
And the same about discussions about, you know, the idea of unwanted pregnancies, the idea of, you know, any number of social problems that we have. There are lots of discussions that can happen about those that have a lot more to do with being able to resolve the situations to more happiness for all the human beings involved than to chastise, limit, or give the government a weapon to control people's lives. I mean, that's
Mhm.
the thing that's truly is amazing to me is that people who would supposedly be so afraid of the power and the overreach of government would give government the ability to make a decision that is between a doctor and a patient, or that is a personal decision on their own.
Mhm. I
You
agree. Yeah.
know? But then you look at other countries in the world, like you look at someplace like the Netherlands, where it's a very interesting sort of uh, culture because of freedom, the freedom that they have within their culture, the ability to sort of like walk this line between you're able to do what you want to do as long as you keep within certain boundaries.
Mhm.
As long as we're doing this thing, whatever it is, whether it be in some other culture morally wrong, right, or whatever, as long as you keep it within the constraints of these boundaries, then we're going to say, okay, go ahead and do that thing. And
Yeah.
uh, it really is so interesting because they're very they once again visiting different cultures. You talk to people, and you get a better understanding of part of why they are the way they are. Like
Mhm.
atheism, very very strong in the Netherlands. Two of the most major cathedrals in Amsterdam are magnificent. The oldest cathedrals there, but they're turned into art spaces. They're art spaces and museums.
I
They're not
love it.
religious at all. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
and so you sort of say, okay, so where does this atheism come from in Amsterdam or in the Netherlands? And if you know from familiar with the Netherlands, it was lowlands, and they built all this land up, and that's why it has canals and all these sort of things. They basically constructed the land, and so it's, talking to a guy from the Netherlands, it's like God did not build this land. We built this land.
Yeah.
We made this earth. God had nothing to do with this. So
Yeah.
why should we thank God for this earth?
I
And
love it.
that was just like a perspective. It was like, here, we made this.
Yeah.
God didn't have anything to do with it. We made the choice. We united together, you know, and so many aspects of their culture are very plain spoken. They're very really. You think that shirt looks good on you? You're sort of big for that shirt, Jerry. Isn't that? Doesn't that shirt look a little bit make you look big, Jerry? You know.
That is funny.
And they don't like the phony American. Oh yeah, yeah. Let's do lunch. Let's
Oh
get
yeah.
together. They want you to get out your book right then and mark the date and time when you're going to go, and that's going to be it. That's when it's going to happen. And
I'm
or
starting to like the Netherlands much more now. I love that way of thinking.
absolutely and bicycling. I mean, bicycling everywhere is such a huge thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and they're very, very, very environmentally conscious. You can get to almost any place in the country like in 45 minutes by train. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful country. But at the exact same time, you want to act within reason, not overstay anything. Like if you go over to someone in the Netherlands in their house in the afternoon and you're like talking, you're visiting with something, and if it gets closer to dinner time, you'll just see them sort of like put out three plates, but not a fourth. Well, we're going to have dinner. And like in America, the automatic, and I've talked to Australians about this too. The automatic would be, oh, you want to join us for dinner? It would be like there would be no second thought at the idea. You'd feel bad if you
Yeah.
said, you need to leave now because we're going to eat dinner. You're supposed to know. You're supposed to know that you are supposed to leave now. It's like, yes, it's been nice visiting. Take care. Have a good dinner and leave.
Well,
You know?
speaking of that, have you ever been to Italy?
Yes, I have been in Italy.
The
Yes.
reason I bring that up is I used to be a manager of Rite Aid years ago, and it was funny because one of my tellers, no, sorry, one of my cashiers was older. She was born in Italy. She came here. And the pharmacist was younger, born in Italy, came here. And the older one said, "Oh my God, all Americans do is care about money. All they do is want to work." She goes, "In Italy, we take the whole afternoon off because we care more about family." Then I was talking to the younger one. She goes, "Yeah, it's not like that anymore. They're a lot more Americanized." And so it was funny because I asked the older one, I said, "Well, why'd you come to America if it's so great?" She goes, "The money."
Ah, ah.
But
That,
the reason I'm asking that is, I'm not sure when you went there. What kind of atmosphere did you see? More of what the younger one said that's more Americanized, or more what the older one said where, no, the business is shut down for 3 hours. We have family time. We care about getting together and social hour.
I'll tell you what, because my time in Italy was so long ago, it was back when I was in the military. I won't
Okay.
use that judgment of it, but I will relate how Barcelona compared to it. I experienced it back in the 70s, and I experienced it now because I spent a month there, and that definitely much more of focus on the busyness of things than not so much the laid back, but still very much Barcelona is a wonderful city because it mixes a lot of different economic levels, a lot of different sort of people, families, and things very well. I don't know if you know about the city. It was sort of designed in I believe it was the 1890s, into this series of sort of oval, sort of like donut holes of buildings with
Hmm.
big courtyards in the center, and designed to have like shops and coffee shops and business along the first floor, and then families as you went up, different sorts of housing. And so they're really large sort of housing complexes, but there's sort of like block after block after block of them. And so what this does is this really creates a wonderful sort of neighborhood within each one of these very large sort of complexes.
Yeah.
You have different demographics of families, different economics, all sort of mixing together, and it very definitely has a wonderful cosmopolitan sort of very fluid, lively sort of life. And within that still is very much holding on to. When I was there, they had the big festival with these gigantic puppets, some of them that were from the 1600s,
Wow.
and and really truly amazing sort of stuff. So I mean, the idea that when you open yourself up to things, you stumble onto other things as well. And
Hmm.
so like those sort of traditions, those sort of like qualities, and who can who could put a value on basically a fresh bread baked every other couple of blocks by some little bakery, some little window bakery,
Hmm.
very fresh foods, very much more closely connected to the day-to-day living versus let's hit the supermarket, and hit this gigantic place and go to the lines here, and this gigantic place and go to the lines there. And just saying things once again. That was one of the biggest shocks for me. Is like their food was so much cheaper. It seemed like it was such great quality, like in Spain in particular, but even in England, that it seemed like good quality, but was still at least a third cheaper of what I was seeing in America.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
probably
But
much better too. Like you said, fresher,
well,
tastier.
they have different types of standards, especially like European standards. EU standards are different. But in any case, like the aspect of I did a number of cruises, which was amazing. Spent really extended periods because I'd say to anybody, you want to travel someplace, spend a month in a place. You can get a better price than an Airbnb if you do something like that. Seriously, you can get like 50% when you stay for a full month someplace,
Hmm.
and then you just get to really experience it. And I did that in Maine and Vermont, but also overseas as well. You want to experience what it's like in Scotland. Go someplace and spend a month in Scotland. Don't bounce yourself all around. I mean, cruises are a wonderful thing because everything is taken care of.
Yeah.
But don't imagine in any way, shape, or form that you're really going to get anything more than a flavor of any of the spots that you visit.
Exactly. No, I completely understand and agree with you. That one place I went to wasn't on a cruise, but it was on a tour. It was a Dracula slash Dracula tour. So it was I went to Transylvania. I
Oh wow!
loved it. It was Romania is such a beautiful country. The people were so nice. Everybody's so friendly. Everything was so cheap. But what I found funny was that it was 2005. So there was a girl from Canada on the tour, and she and I were talking about the economy at the time. And one of the workers at the restaurant, he was in Transylvania. He goes, oh, the economy's not good. I said, it's not really the best. I said, why? How much do you make an hour? He goes, $5. I said, you make $5 an hour? No, $5 a day. And that put everything into perspective for me. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna stop complaining. Life, as I said before, life is pretty damn good. $5 a day, and I know everything's a lot cheaper there, but still, it's just sometimes people don't realize like how good we actually have it. But the people were so friendly, so like, hey, you want to try this? You want to do this? Come here. Like, just it was great. It was one of the best trips I ever went on.
Oh, absolutely. Being open, the thing that we were talking about before, listening to other people's stories. I mean, the thing is, we share 97% of all human experience, but each of those human experiences are unique to that human being. You
Mhm.
had a father, I had a father, Joe down the street has a father, and so does Raheem down the hallway. And all of those experiences, those with our fathers, were totally unique to that thing.
Yeah.
And day was unique in every single one of them, and holidays were unique, and all of those things. But they have the fact that we do have those experiences should allow us to be open enough to know that somebody else's experience can be different, and we can learn from that too.
Yeah. Well, you know what I like too about this is another thing I liked about Romania. Uh, Vlad Dracula, who was the
Yes.
ruler at that time, his castle is still it's not all together, but it's still there, and you can climb the 1,500 steps at its top. You can go inside. So there
Well,
was a time they wanted to turn it into an amusement park, and Romania said no. This is a historic monument. We're not going to change it all. And it made me think of what would be in America if they would tear that down in a second to make a mall. Well, not really a mall. It's a bad example now because malls are not those are things. But they would make it into a parking lot or something. It would America compared to other countries. To me, my personal opinion, they really don't have any sense of history for the most part. It's more like, all right, let's find a good way to make money. All right, this is where the Boston Massacre was. I don't care. Let's put a Bank of America there. Oh wait, this is where the Civil War happened. I don't care. Let's get an amusement park up. We can make more money than having people come and check out the old cannons. Oh, I don't know what just happened there, but
Come on, suckers! All of a sudden I hear, brim, brim.
What's a diaphragm again?
Ha! We caught one.
They're supposed to be weird.
Oh, yeah, no. If you say so.
I've always wanted to be in a movie.
Waiting around for autumn, waiting around for autumn. I was watching the TV, I was watching the TV, yeah. Waiting around for winter, waiting around for winter. I was watching the TV, I was watching the
and we're back. We had a little computer glitch, but we are back better than ever. So when I last left off, I was talking about the difference between the way some Americans think and the way other countries think. And I was talking about how when I went to Romania, they wanted to turn Dracula's castle into an amusement park, and they're like, "No way, it's an historical monument." And I said most Americans would say, "Ah, come on, let's make some money. Let's build a parking lot. Let's get amusement. Let's do something where it could be more lucrative." And I said a lot of people who are higher up who make the laws have a lot less history involved than some other countries. But we're back with Jerry, and I did notice a new background. Last time we had the nice cruise ship. You were floating gently through the seas. Now where are we?
What this is in Amsterdam, and it is I by happenstance happened to get a room booked in a basically a hotel, a lodging house that had been a lodging house since the 1400s. It had been, for an extremely long amount of time, and hold it, I've reversed the dates. The 1600s. It was
Okay.
from the 1600s. So the lodging house from the 1600s. And if you're in Amsterdam, one of the things you'll notice is that they have very narrow stairwells and very steep, because they were taxed when they would, because they created the land themselves. The land was taxed by how much square footage you took up on the ground. So when people built their houses, they built them up, and they often, you see these houses that are actually bigger on the top than they are on the bottom, because they would build out sort of balconies and things like this, because they couldn't be taxed on that. And so they have these very narrow stairwells, and they go up, amazing distances. And I was feeling pain at the time that this was going on, but it was this. I'd been able to book a second hotel room at 2 nights, because I decided to stay on for the king's birthday, which is a magnificent thing. Absolutely go to it. Go before a few days so you can see Amsterdam while it's just a beautiful, wonderful old city. But stay for this amazing party, unbelievable. But in any case, I climb up. It's the fifth floor of this building, an American fifth floor. It's only fourth in European floors. And I'm looking out, and so the lodge had been there since the 1600s. The cathedral across the way was like 1474. So this view, which you see here,
very nice
was
view.
was the same view for the last 400 years.
Wow.
The view out of this window was the same view. The cathedral was like 35, 40 feet away, and I was at the fifth floor level, so you're seeing it at the stained glass level up above. And it's just like, and the thing that's so funny is, like, you when you think of XXX, what do you think of?
Well, I'm thinking porn, but
Exactly. Well, the symbol for Amsterdam from back in that time was XXX. And so just that, I mean, it is a funny coincidence over time, but the reality that here, and the thing is, you can see it right there in the cathedral, in the stained glass. It's the founding of Amsterdam, and there he is, the whoever the founder is, holding a flag, and on the flag is the banner XXX, and Amsterdam. But once again, it's like, happenstance, going to things, and then the thing you're talking about is like, especially almost any culture, but to be able to look at European culture, and they value very much the things of the past, and to go through and say, wow, these are the same buildings from 400 years ago, or or like going through in Naples, Italy, and I did spend some time in Italy when I was a younger man. But even then, I mean, hey, this is a 1,000-year-old granite slum.
yeah.
People have been here for 1,000 years, families after generation after generation after generation, and it's just like, using the same aqueduct, the same water source, the same sewage system, you know,
Wow.
and to understand that there's that sort of longevity, or to go to Pompeii and experience just being in that place and that name of that place.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to because it also gives you perspective on things, like I was talking about before, through age as well. Doing something younger and then coming back to it at an older time in your life.
Mhm.
To only compare it from one side is a different thing. I think that's an important thing to realize, is that it encourages us to give something to sort of like look at. Like when I was when we pulled in on my last part of the cruise, we pulled in on the west side piers where the Intrepid is at. The Intrepid, which is an aircraft carrier.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was on my aircraft carrier, the USS Independence, it was gigantic. It's a quarter mile long. It's 5,000 people. It's a city on the ocean. It's aircraft and jets and all this crazy, huge stuff. I couldn't imagine something bigger than that. When that cruise ship pulled up alongside the Intrepid was dwarfed by the cruise ship. It was, oh, isn't that a nice little boat over there? And I mean, and it's like truly amazing. The cruise ship had maybe 10,000 people on it, 8,000 crew and passengers.
Wow.
You know, I mean, some of these are gigantic, and that was actually the biggest one I had coming back. On Cunard, on Norwegian, that was different. There were smaller size ships, but still only 3,500 people, something. It was very interesting from that perspective. But like I'm saying, it's like to look back on those various things of the thing that brought me to the sea in the first place, and the experiences that I had coming back with it, the reflection on, who I was then and who I am now.
I was gonna say that because I think it's important to take the pause button off for many reasons, but also you're older, you've had more life experiences, and I think you're gonna appreciate everything you're doing more when you're older than you would maybe if you're 20 years old. Because you're 20, most of the time you're like, all right, man, let's just party, let's just have a good time, which is fun. But when you're older, you're like, wow, look at that wall behind me, look at that, look at the history of this. I think you have a much better appreciation for everything that you're seeing more than you would if you were 20, 21 years old.
Oh, absolutely, and and it's no small thing to have it be also the realization of mortality. Having the year before I had the back surgery, I had a right hip replacement thing too. So it's like a whole bunch of variety, which mortality is something that is placed at the forefront, and I have a great. I love human beings. I loved teaching for 30 years. I mean, to me, like, we're all just like these, fantastic sparks that are floating inside of different colored and shaped bags of water. That's all we are. We're just the human being is this, whatever that spark is inside of them, and it is that thing that when you travel and you acknowledge and you see that spark, and you have somebody see that spark in you. That's what makes this existence real. I mean, we all travel alone. Every single one of us travels alone. It doesn't matter what anybody says.
Mm-hmm.
But the only time that we feel connected in this world is when we connect with other human beings. They verify our existence in this gigantic, magnificent thing that we're in. When we look at that thing and say, hey, did you see that? And they go, hey, yeah, I saw it too. Wow. It's like, I verify my existence exists. Or I'm sad. Are you sad? Yes, I'm sad too. Oh, I have a reason to be sad.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's we have developed habits, and not to use the term toxic masculinity too much, but like the idea of a stoicism and non-connection to emotion and non-appreciation of the present moment, being too sophisticated, too whatever to experience life to its fullest extent.
Yeah.
And it's we are a lucky collection of molecules. That's my take on it. Every molecule that exists in you, it has existed for millions, if not hundreds of millions of years. All the iron, calcium, all that. When you and I are both gone, those molecules will go out back to the universe and exist for billions of more years.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we realize that we exist. We have all of these molecules get to like, whoa, this is what we're part of.
Yeah.
That's amazing. This is something that's magnificent. And the sun, as far as we know, as magnificent as it is, doesn't realize it exists.
Yeah.
Doesn't have an intelligence that can sort of look out and say, my God, this is this gigantic thing that we're in. And like, as far as my book is concerned, that's pretty magnificent right there.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if becoming more self-actualized, which is a terrible term, but it's like taking control of one's own life with the idea of saying, first say yes.
Mm-hmm.
When that thing, when your bliss calls you to something, and once again, it means starting a bakery, or it means just like trying a different thing,
I am. Well, I always, as I mentioned before, I said I hate the comfort zone. I get bored in the comfort zone. I always want to try something new. I always want to try something different. I want to keep it fresh. I don't want to become stagnant where it's just the same routine over and over. I mean, everybody has a creature of habit to a certain point, but for me, for the most part, I try to do different things. I try to experience have different adventures. I want to get out of my comfort zone, but yeah, so many people, unfortunately, and you mentioned the toxic masculinity and stoicism. I think some people feel like they can't really. Well, if I shed a tear, then people are going to think I'm weak. If I do this, people are going to think that, and they're afraid to be themselves for so many different reasons, and not actually enjoying life as much as they could enjoy life.
Exactly. Be moved by the experience. Life is a great moving experience. I mean, going back to Joseph Campbell again. I mean, one of the expressions I love of his, when he talks about, the idea of God,
Mm-hmm.
and it said, God is that which the tongue of man has not soiled.
I like that. Never heard that one before.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it. I mean, when we have that like existential experience, when we look out at the sunrise, or when we feel the power of the ocean, when we experience the like wonder of a child, when we go through all of these things, the minute we try to put it down into words, it immediately minimizes it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't you know bring all of that feeling, no matter how fluid, and that's why in some ways music is such a better way of communicating some of that, because it's a very chemical sort of based thing. I mean, I feel sad, I have sad chemicals in my brain, I write a song that's sad, you listen to the song that's sad, you play the song that's sad, your brain starts to make those same chemicals that were in my brain. You feel like I felt. And
Yeah.
I think that is such a thing about like understanding the power of music.
Well,
To
I'm
be,
glad you brought that up. I want to stop right there because I interviewed a composer, and the Cheshire Symphony. She's the lead conductor, and I brought that up, and I said when I mentioned I love classical music, oh, classical music is boring. I said watch any movie. It's not the movie that makes you sad. It makes you cry. It's the music. It's not the movie that makes you scared. It's the music. It's not the movie that makes it suspenseful. It's the music. And the music is so much more powerful, and it gives you so much. Because, as I mentioned, it gives power to the movie. And if people, when I said watch a movie without music, you'll realize how powerful music is. And you just put it into even better words. It's like, don't put it in a book or don't write it in a journal. Just play a song, and that would be how I would feel. I love that.
absolutely. And that music is the universal song thing. It is the thing that you don't need to be. You just need to be a human being.
Mhm.
If you listen to a dirge, a funeral song of whatever culture, there's going to be an aspect to it that's going to be, you're going to understand it's about sorrow, it's about death, it's about leaving, it's about putting behind, whatever the feeling of that culture is. And whether it's a Mozart requiem, or it's a Japanese song but is so discordant that it just makes you like immediately feel like sadness,
Mhm.
and it comes at the sound, the human experience from a different direction, and yet it communicates in that way.
Yeah.
You know, I I, I really do love that idea that like the music is the only thing that can affect the chemistry of your brain without touching your body.
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I can listen to a song from the 70s and it'll bring back so many great. I can almost remember where I was. I was like 9 years old. My father's playing Sentimental Lady by Bob Welch. And I can just remember it. It just brings back so many great memories of my childhood. That's just one example. But that's why, like, I love classical music. I'm actually going to see Mozart. I don't know what Requiem it is, but they're doing something in Yukon. Last week I saw another Mozart thing in Cheshire. I saw Beethoven over at the Bushnell. I just loved seeing that. But what I loved about like different classical music, like Mozart was just a fun-loving guy. He just loved the part. You could see it in his music. You could hear it in his music. I mean, Beethoven, unfortunately, we had the deafness. He was sad, depressed, and you could hear that in the music. It's just that music represented how they lived, and I love that.
well, absolutely, and I mean, like many kids, probably at least of my generation, and as other generations too, coming forward. Uh, the classical music of like the Looney Tunes, of the Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yes.
One of the most fun shows I ever saw was Bugs on Broadway, and it was a full symphony orchestra with Bugs Bunny clips, and they were playing the soundtracks that we all knew and heard from, remember from Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Oh yeah, I remember that very well.
And it's so much fun. But why is it fun? Not only because of the emotion of the cartoon with it, it is the emotion of the music. It is the music that makes you want to, or whatever it is. It's the thing that stirs us, and I mean that's like, there is no such thing as bad music. There's only badly played music. You
I,
know.
yes, I agree with that. And
But
unfortunately, it's another thing where people, I think, oh, well, when they say like, "Oh, well, this band is a guilty pleasure," I said, "I don't have guilty pleasures. I have pleasures. I'm not afraid to admit I like." I'm just giving examples. I'm not afraid to admit like the Bee Gees or Barry Manilow as much as I like Exodus and Slayer, and as much as I like Mozart, Beethoven, Vivaldi. I love all types of music. And I think unfortunately people just put the blinders on and only like one type of movie, one type of music, one type of books, one type of genre, and I think they're missing out on so much because there's so much greatness in all these different things, and I think it makes you a more well-rounded person if you take off the blinders and aren't afraid to enjoy it all.
oh, absolutely. And I mean, the other aspect is, if you understand that we have an evolving society,
Hmm.
if you do not keep aware of what the society uses to represent itself through its art, through its music, through its movies, through its whatever, if you just like, oh, all I want to do is, I mean, I love 80s.
Oh
I
yeah.
love, I love first wave 80s. I mean, I love all that sort of techno stuff, and it's totally killer, and it was like great, and it's all high energy, and it's all like, positive sort of in a way. So like, absolutely, I love that. But I'm not going to be stuck listening to 80s all the time. I'm going to be listening to, better or worse, Kanye or Taylor or whoever else is out there right now,
Oh,
or Mitch,
exactly.
or whoever it may be, because that's the exact same time, you know, it represents the culture of the time, and it's really necessary for people. I mean, especially in our society, in a number of ways, for people just to be open to like what other people are, what they're really trying to say. you know,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's way too easy for any one of us to presuppose. There's a great book that you should read. It's called The Invisible Gorilla.
I'm gonna write that down afterwards. Please remind me after. I want to read that.
No, but it relates to the idea that we come to things, and what we think we observe is only partially what we observe. We basically mostly observe what we think we're going to observe.
Hmm.
And the experiment, you might even see it. You can see it on YouTube. They say, here, watch this basketball game for 5 minutes.
I've seen
Uh,
that.
yes, okay. And the gorilla comes out, and they don't see the gorilla. Like 65% of the people do not see that a guy comes out in a gorilla suit and waves, and they don't even notice it. And it's that aspect, because they didn't see it, because they didn't think they would see that, because they were focused on one other thing, focused on how many times the players in the white jerseys get the ball. So they're counting that, and they're not seeing a whole other thing that's there. And so to understand that we come into these situations with preconceived biases, and they're more likely to be biased if we only have a limited perspective of the world.
Yep. No, I love that. It's funny. 'Cause I used to do motivational speaking, as I mentioned, and I opened up for somebody he was the headliner. I was just the first guy that went out and did my stuff for about 25 minutes, but he did the basketball. And it's funny because the first time I did not see that. Then afterwards, like, how could I have missed that? Now I can't, I watch it again. I cannot see it. I mean, I have to see it. It's there. It's so obvious, but I did not see it the first time at all.
Well, when the student's ready, they'll see the lesson.
Yep, yep. And I wanted to say, give an example of like, because you and I have very similar mentality. Just talking to you for the last hour and a half or so, where when I was in radio years ago, and so during the week, it was an AM station, one of the stations I worked at, and I used to be a board tech because they had shows that were already simulcast from bigger stations that they bought out. But on the weekend, I had my own radio show where I have to play my music and talk. So on the weekdays, I would bring a book. My program director says, "You have the most eclectic taste." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're listening to oldies. You have a Clockwork Orange shirt on, and you're reading a biography on Mozart. I never met anybody like you, but I love that."
Exactly. Well, it's just very young. I read The Origin of the Species way before I should have been able to. But one of the things I really realized was diversification is the key to survival.
Mhm.
Being able to adapt. And I mean, even with the idea of like moving around a lot, having a lot of, different situations and experiences, you had to be able to adapt. And
Yeah.
anyone who's come into our technological era, the real problem has been that they become very used to a certain level of technology already. The
Mhm.
iPhone will be like a pivotal piece of technology for quite a while, as far as I can imagine. The personal device that gives you all information.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whether you got 3D glasses on that you're wearing, or it's connected into your Neuralink or whatever the fuck. Pardon my expression. It will be about it. But like when you transition from the paper media through various forms of recording media and all this, and if you evolved with that stuff and understood the other idea of change, I think it more prepares you for any other changes that come up. You
Yeah.
know, you aren't sort of placid. What is it? You're sort of lackadaisical about how you accept the technology that's around you. You can sort of
Yeah.
like work in multiple spheres. I'm doing that. There was a '70s night at music the other night. I left my phone at home in celebration of the '70s.
I love it. But you know what? I want your opinion on this because this is what I think. I think technology is actually making us dumber. And I'll tell you what I mean. They did a study and they said that people no longer retain information like they used to because now they don't have to really memorize anything. Oh, I don't know it. I'll look it up on Google. And it's just I think it's dumbing the nation down. And it's also, as I've talked to other teachers and they said that they actually had to do classes on communications because kids don't even know how to talk to each other anymore because they're always on their phone and they can't talk without their phone, and they can't do eye to eye anymore. It's more like, let me text them instead. What's your opinion on that?
Wow. I absolutely. It's sort of interesting. I was listening to a neurologist talk about the idea that the computer is sort of an evolutionary step, because
Mhm.
basically we reached a point in society where we were handling much more information on a day-to-day basis than at any point ever in history.
Mhm.
200 years ago, if you met 400 people in your lifetime, that would be like amazing. You would have been a well-traveled and well-versed person. Today, you can meet 400 people in a day. You can have contact with, I could easily have contact with like 300 to 400 students and teachers in a day.
Oh yeah.
And so our ability to handle all of the information sort of related to the fact that, well, we needed to create something because our brains literally could not hold all of this information anymore. So
Mhm.
what did we do? We evolutionarily evolved these external brains. And these external brains were able to do these things that our own brains couldn't do fast enough, well enough, or it would take too much effort to combine to occur to make them happen. And by the way, we have the technology now to be able to start to make these electronic brains. And
Mhm.
so here we go. We've evolved this, and who knows how that will evolve? Maybe the idea of a human being more like this, dumb director that doesn't really have any of the information at all. It's just sort of like the switching station of deciding how information is handled versus both the switching station and the receptacle of the information.
Yeah.
Does it make any difference that information is stored outside of my brain, or does it make a difference that I know how to use that information?
Mhm.
And I mean, this is what the education question really comes down to. Is just like, and I've worked with educational technology, the whole evolution of it. I mean, I was like the first internet chair in Bridgeport schools, understanding what the fucking internet was, pardon my expression, what the internet was. you know, and having summer programs that were teaching kids how to write code for the Beardsley Park Zoo and the Discovery Museum for all the nonprofits, and it was like a work program,
Yeah,
you know.
I think that's a good idea because when you incorporate the technology with education, that's a great combination. But unfortunately, most kids, and again, I'm generalizing, there's a lot of kids that aren't like this, but all they'll really use it for is to like post a TikTok video, put a Instagram reel, say hi to their friends instead of like you said, you can find out now what's happening in Ukraine. Just click on it. It's like, oh, here's a live feed. Back in the day, you'd have to go to the movies once a week. At the end of the movie, they'd have a reel showing the news. So
Exactly.
it's a lot different.
Oh, it's totally different, and also I think this gets back to uh, that sense of powerlessness people may have. I mean, like I have actually thought for a long time, and I mean, I love television. I mean, I watched TV so much when I was a kid that I was like 12 before I realized my mother's name wasn't Sony. But uh, uh, you know, uh, but the thing about television and a lot of this computerized media is that, especially the storytelling, is that the conflicts that occur there, it looks like our real world. It looks like our world.
Mhm.
And there are conflicts that occur there that sometimes are very much like the conflicts that occur in our own lives, or not. But
Right.
in any case, they will go on and they will be resolved in 22 minutes. They
Yep.
will be resolved in 90 minutes. They will be resolved in 3 hours, but they will be resolved and it'll all be done. And we won't have had to do anything. And we will have been emotionally involved with it, but we wouldn't have been able to do anything. And by the way, we couldn't have done anything to change it. So we're sort of like trained in this sort of thing of being observers of the world.
Yes.
Let's not grab the person off the railroad tracks. Let's look at them be on the railroad tracks and see who grabs them.
Yeah. I think kids are way too sheltered. This is my opinion. Kids are way too sheltered now. They're not experiencing things that they should experience. Like back when you and I were kids, I think we had a lot more freedom. We were able to do a lot more things. I know the world has changed in so many ways and different things, and parents are more cautious. But I think that, as you mentioned, like they're more like looking out the window, saying, "Oh wow, look at that," instead of actually being a part of it, and they're
Yeah,
missing
yeah.
out on a lot.
Well, also, I mean, we're both also speaking from the position of white males, which we really have to like
Yes.
acknowledge that you and I had freedoms that my sister, I know absolutely my sister didn't have, and I know other girls didn't have,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
and also just even within neighborhoods and places like that. I mean, I had the unique experience of when I was very young, growing up for a short while in the housing projects in Gary, Indiana.
Hmm.
My dad was an orphan raised by German nuns, and so we were very super poor, and we were like one of the only white families and all the black families that were there, and it was like a very natural sort of thing for me. And then eventually was even in foster care for a while, and it's so, the different worlds that people live in, their experiences. Always got to be open to that understanding of that sort of thing. I totally do remember having a certain amount of freedom. I mean, I absolutely, as big as as terrible a person as my father was. When I got my driver's license, he let me have the car. Uh, I had no curfew, just as long as the car was back in the driveway in the morning with gasoline.
Wow.
And that was like the biggest amount of freedom I ever had in my existence, and and it probably saved me as much as anything else because I had a car, other people didn't, and I was willing to drive anybody, any place in freaking Western Chicago area. Oh
Yeah.
my, but that was it. I had that freedom. I was lucky enough to have that freedom. I think about those sort of things as like, choices people make. Sometimes it can be because they're allowed to be able to have the choice to make.
Yeah. Also, I think too, kids are too sheltered. Once they have a sense of freedom, when they go to college, they're just going to go crazy. But I think if the parents just over the time let them have a little bit of freedom, like your father did with that, or just different ways, by the time they get to 19, 20, they're like, you know what? I really don't need to rebel because I've had a pretty good life and I was able to do a lot of different things within reason. And I wasn't cooped up in my room saying, "Oh my God, if you go outside, you're going to get killed," or if this happens, you can't talk to anybody because everybody's out to get you. If you had people that were teaching you like that, then when you finally do have a sense of freedom, like, yeah, which is not
Oh yeah,
good. Yeah. So it's just
yeah,
I mean, it's a different world. I'm glad. I always mention to people, I said, I'm glad I'm at least the age I am. Sometimes I wish I was my parents' age. And people are like, why are you wishing your life away? So I'm not wishing my life away, but I love that era and I love the whole. When I know everybody, I can not sensationalize it, but make it seem maybe a little bit better than it really was, because every decade had its own issues. Like the 70s had the energy crisis, 60s had civil rights. I mean, I can go on and on. So I know
yeah,
that part, but I just love the music, the movies, the way, and it seemed like back then people could afford to have, like, perfect example. My father was making $8 an hour as a cop. My mother had 3 kids. They had a mortgage, a house. They were able to do that on his income. Try that now.
yeah.
So that's what I mean by, I think, like, it was better times for different reasons. And I know every time period had its own issues, but
Yeah, it's yeah. I sort of, but it's like I don't know. I love looking at the long view. It's I think it's like early on I got into science fiction. I don't know if you know Isaac Asimov at
oh
all,
yeah,
but like the Foundation trilogy. I mean,
yeah,
Harry, he writes this. He has the mathematics to determine whether a galactic empire can survive or not by building of a foundation and then another foundation that's hidden from the first one, and how it all evolves to history so that things can survive. And it's like it's sort of funny that all of these things. Here's a great one. Here's a great idea to think about. In every time travel movie, we know that if somebody goes into the past, that if they change even like the smallest thing, they could change the entire history from there forward, right? We
yeah.
absolutely can't change like the smallest thing, don't have contact, don't whatever, right? Okay. So what that means then is that the littlest thing we do now has an amazing impact on the future.
Mhm. Yeah. There's a great
Smallest
movie. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
if the smallest thing that we could have done in the past could have changed the present so dramatically, then the littlest things that we do now can do dramatic changes to the future. And so those little things that we do, the little hurts or the little goodnesses, those things that we believe that people are good and deserve to be acknowledged and recognized, which is what all people want to do anyway. Getting back to that spark floating around in that bag of water, you
Yeah.
know, wants to have that acknowledge me, see that I'm here in this universe, and I think that's a big part of it. Go ahead, you want to say
No,
something?
what I wanted to say was, to your point, there's a German movie called Run Lola Run. It's the whole movie is a girl trying to get money to her boyfriend. It's told 3 different times, but each time something happens and changes the whole outcome. Like, one example is she's running and she gets hit by a car. The second time she trips, in that 1 second, because she tripped and had to get up, the car narrowly missed her. The first time she goes upstairs to say hi to her father, she walks in her father. He's cheating on her mother with some other woman. The second time somebody says, "Hey, how are you doing?" She says, "Hi." And the woman walks out before she gets sad to her father. So it shows like how 1 second can change the whole trajectory, and right to the point what you just said.
It is totally amazing, and like if you're lucky enough to, or I don't know, lucky enough to, or if maybe it's just human beings look for causation. It's like, sometimes people say things were meant to happen.
Yeah.
Ever hear that expression? Once again, it's like my brain works this way. I don't know why it does, but it always turns these things, and it turns them around and says things happened, and it's for us to find the meaning in them.
Mm-hmm.
it's not that they were meant to happen. There was no predestination that this was going to happen, except from the perspective of, if this thing happened before and it happened before, and we didn't recognize that it happened before and that it happened before, then in a way it was sort of meant for happen, or it was for us now to see, oh, that's why this happened.
Yeah.
And and I think that that's the whole thing. It's like we have to be open and willing to realize that we make mistakes, that we're human beings, and the same thing with whoever we are in our relationships.
That's why when people say, well, if God wants me to have it, he's going to give it to me. It's like, no, what about God who helps those who help themselves? I said, you can't just sit around waiting for it. And they did a study on this. And they said that people who thought like that had the lowest paying jobs, did the least amount, because they're just sitting there waiting for something good to happen to them instead of going out and being proactive and saying, no, I'm going to make this happen myself. I'm not going to wait for something to give me a sign and say, okay, Rich, it's time now. No, I'm going to make that time now. So I definitely agree with that mentality.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, I just think, I mean, the two of the best administrators that I had in my entire teaching career were Black women, and this one beautifully strong Black woman, Jetty Tisdale, down in Bridgeport, in the middle of P.T. Barnum housing project, and she talked about the idea, they say, because she was like totally down. She was it. She was like, you gotta keep your eyes on the prize, but you gotta keep your ass in motion.
Yeah.
And that's what
I love that.
it wasn't just about looking for the prize. Oh, keep your eyes on the prize. Great, there's the prize. What are you doing to get there? And it's like that understanding that life is a very, very tough place. I mean, as tough and as hard and as horrible as so many people of this generation feel the world is.
Mhm.
And granted, there are injustices and there are terrible, horrible things that have happened. But I mean, you can go back to the fucking Buddha, and I mean, the existence of life and disease and death and destruction have been the same forever in the
Yeah.
human. That's the real reality.
Yeah.
That's the real ordeal. And if you don't think that, like, that understanding of life and existence cannot inform your existence, then you really have to rethink that. That's an immature thought pattern, and it's one that is, as much as they like to talk about it, is sort of narcissistic, is sort of self-tuned, looking only, you know. We need other people because we can't see ourselves. My analogy is, a candle cannot light its own base.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter how bright the person is. They need someone else to light the base of who they are.
Well, there's a comedian I like named Bill Maher. He's
Oh, absolutely. I love Bill Maher. Yeah.
okay. So he made a great comment regarding to what you're saying right now. He was saying, people have it the best I've ever had it. Life is so easy for most people. I'm not saying everybody. For most
Yeah.
people, he goes, this is why they think he had a theory of why the cancel culture is so popular and all this, because people need something to rebel against because they're so bored because everything is so easy for them. They're going online saying, oh my God, I'm outraged. And he calls it the mock outrage, which I believe is true, because when they're like, oh my God, everybody is so enraged. You're like, what, two people are enraged? Now you're saying everybody hates this. So what you're saying is true, is like they're just so sitting in their room living, in a nice house, it's heated, they're comfortable, they have money in the bank. They're like, oh my God, life is so bad, it's the worst it's ever been. It's like, no, it's actually for the most part pretty damn good.
Yeah, but there's an expression, things may be bad, but they're better.
Mm-hmm.
It may be bad, absolutely right. Racism is bad.
Oh yeah.
Stereotyping, gender issues, and all that sort of stuff. But it is better than people being lynched in the street, and black parts of cities being burned down, and the KKK marching with full rights with the fucking National Guard alongside them.
Exactly.
I think it's a little bit better than that.
I think so too.
And so to have that understanding, and unfortunately, there are some people who get very easily offended that it's even sort of like questioning that, you don't even have a right to question a thing, because of
Yes.
because what group you are, what status you are, whatever it may happen to be, what gender you are, you don't even have a right to question it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really ridiculous, because the minute I tell you that you can't question something that I'm dealing with, then it immediately becomes totally evident why what you're saying is bullshit. I took an ethics class, and he said that the easiest morality test is to know the way to know whether an action was a moral action or not was if someone was doing it to you, how would you feel about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. Easy enough. Easy enough. You want to know if slavery is bad? Well, if I was a slave, I don't think I'd like it. Yeah, so I guess slavery is bad. It's very easy, and it is ethical. It's like a standard. It has nothing about good or bad in reality. It has on are these behaviors, and that's why I think we need to talk more about ethics and less about morality.
Yes.
We,
I agree.
that there are ways that we act as human beings, and I think this is an aspect of also looking at European culture. I think there is this in reality a movement away from certain aspects of organized religion and moral, turpitude, those sort of things that at least used to be catchphrases in American society. Now you can have the worst morality in all of America and still be the number one candidate. Which is
Yeah.
true.
Unfortunately, that is so true.
Oh, I
Did
just
and
oh
did you see what's going on in Brazil? The reason I'm bringing this up because I guess this very similar situation what happened January 6th and same
yes,
from the candidate, and they said nope, you can no longer run. No, I mean the way that they ran that, and they said nope, you're indicted, you're goodbye. Yeah, they washed their hands of him, and I just don't understand. I mean, this is a conversation we could have. I don't understand why people are looking at that like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah, I'm down with that. Okay.
just the fact. I mean, we are the worst in reality. We are the worst democracy in the world because we truly don't let the voters decide who is the leader of the country,
Yes.
and the electoral college even exists at all is a fucking, pardon my expression, is a mockery of the idea of democracy, and that both parties should be totally and wholeheartedly committed to eliminating it so that the voice of the people can truly be heard
Mhm.
and carried out. The fact that a majority of the people voted for the person who did not become president in what, 3 out of the last 5 elections,
Mhm.
it is insane. Is insane.
Yeah.
And to say that we're a democracy, and then to also that a very small group of people are given so much power, as much power as a much larger group of people. The
Mhm.
fact that there's 2 senators from California and 2 senators from Nevada, and the 2 senators from Nevada have as much power as the 2 senators from California.
I know. Well,
Uh,
also, we're only one candidate away from a dictatorship, too. We have two choices. That's another thing.
oh yeah, that's the whole. I mean, any number of situations, but I mean that's the thing that I sort of really wish that I could be put in that time capsule for 100 years and come back, because I really would love to see how history looks at this period of history, how down the line will it be like us looking back on Taft and Teapot Dome
Yeah.
and that sort of shit, or will it be looking back on Caesar and the murder in the Senate. Who knows? It's so amazing, and the insurrection. I mean, we now have that as a part of our history
Yeah.
forever, ad infinitum. And so
Yeah.
how do we come in the time period that comes after that? Who we choose as leaders, who the younger generation coming up in 15 years,
I
who
know.
are there to become politically active for and about and with, and what will be important to them.
I just think what's funny is what outraged people. I'm going to go back to Dan Quayle spelling potato incorrectly. They were outraged. Oh my God. Now I wish that was the biggest thing that a candidate
Oh,
did.
dude, my God. It is truly amazing. It is truly amazing. And once again, this is like, the frog being boiled in the water that gets raised little by little by little.
Mhm.
You throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, it jumps out immediately. You put it in a cold pot of water and slowly raise the heat on it. You can boil it all the way till it's cooked, and it won't jump out at all because it gets adjusted to it, adjusted to it, adjusted to it.
Yeah.
And what made one aspect of what made Donald Trump, and still does in a way make Donald Trump a viable candidate or leader, is that for decades he was in the public eye, and at least for a good chunk of time he was firing people and hiring people and telling people how to do jobs and judging them and being very rich, and also saying the same thing that the average Joe liked to say.
Yeah.
You're fired,
Yeah.
he does that whole thing. And then now he comes out, and granted, there are lots of different parts of America that the government in various forms has not done well by the people, or that people just like, damn, I hate that fucking tax for the whatever, and the why are they trying to get my gun? I got 47 of them. Who says I shouldn't have them? It's like, and so then all you have to do is say, yeah, well, they're attacking me too. That darn government, it's attacking me, and when they're attacking me, they're attacking you. And yeah, we have to stick up for him because he's just like me, just a little guy trying to fight it. Yeah, a little guy with like $84 million in compensatory damages for sexual assault against someone, and another, $5 million, $50 million here and there. It's
Yeah.
just like,
Well, not only that, but people want to get into his policies. He raised the debt almost more than any other president in 4 years. I can't remember. I just heard the amount the other day in the last Real Talk or Real Time. I mean, I was watching, and they had that. I can't remember the number, but it was astronomical. So, and if you want to get into policies too, I don't understand. Like, I know exactly what you said is exactly true. That why certain people like him, but he everything the people that like him the most, he is against the most. They don't even realize it. He is so much for the rich and so much for people who have money. The people who are broke and people that really love him, he could care less about that person. His laws and policies go against everything they believe in, but they just like you said, they hear him on TV. Oh, that's how I talk, so he's got to be good. I remember when George W. Bush, everybody thought he was such a dummy, and they're like, "Oh, I want a president like me." And then going back to Bill Maher, I watch the show a lot. And he was like, "No, I want somebody who's actually better than me. I would never want to be president. I would never want somebody like me. I want somebody who's a little bit better than me. I don't want somebody." And it's just that unfortunately, the criteria is leveled off and gone down a lot of what people expect from their leaders.
Well, that's the thing, is that especially when you're used to so many elections in a row where people are sort of, in many cases, choosing for the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
And like, oh man, I gotta vote. It's not that I'm voting for this person, I'm voting against this person. And so that what comes down to then is that you just have this sort of like race to the bottom.
Yeah.
And we haven't, and the Democrats are so fucking remiss in not having a whole cadre of more younger middle-aged people coming up to take over roles of leadership. It just to have like this is it, this is what we have to go with. And also Joe Biden himself should fucking know that he needs to turn over the reins,
Yeah.
so or before things go out. I mean, I mean, we're all human, I understand this, and pride goeth before the fall, but it's such a killer that you would wish there'd be some amount of, like, Washington knew to turn down, that's it.
Yeah, they wanted him to be king. And he
Yes,
said no. Whatever he did, 8 years. What was he? How many years did he do? Was it 4?
yeah, maybe it's 4, I don't know.
Yeah, either one. But like there's like, yeah, you're king for life. He's like, no, I don't want this, and I love that about him.
Yeah, and I mean, we need that same sort of leadership today that's willing to say, so much how much, it's ridiculous to think that any of the senators would especially Republican senators from particular states, would vote to get rid of the Electoral College.
Yeah.
Would vote to abolish it. As long as it is politically empowering to them, gives them more power than another group, than all the rest of the country, then they will never ever vote against it, even though it is unfair. And it is obviously, if you were thinking about one nation and us all together, then you would want to have equality. Just like the idea of like voting districts should be decided by a fucking computer program.
Yeah.
We're of the age, we're of the era that we can come up with a computer program. They can absolutely figure out how things should be divided up to the best advantage of both sides, and go from there. But no, people will always try to cheat somebody else if they have ability to cheat, and that's like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. And the sad thing is these politicians could give a shit less about us. And I'll tell you what I mean. Say you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat, or vice versa. You come out with, I was giving an example, like world peace or the cure for cancer. I'm going to vote it down because it's not my idea and it's going to make your party look good. And then I'm going to wait till you're out of office and I'm going to come up with that idea and say, hey, look what I have. I have a cure for cancer. I found world peace. And it's just sad that they care less about the people they're representing. It's all about them staying in power and making the other person look bad. And it's just, and what I don't like about with people is, even though they'll hate one person, they'll vote the party line because they're so afraid to vote against what the person. Like, perfect example for me is, I would vote for John McCain in a second when he was in his prime. I thought the guy was great. I loved what he was saying, and he was an independent. And right now, you and I were talking off the air about this. I am definitely way more to the left, but I would vote for Liz Cheney in a second. I just like her, and maybe I don't agree with every policy that she ever had, but she's a normal person, and she can be talked to or talked with, and she can, she can negotiate well.
Yes, absolutely. I agree entirely. I mean, anybody who, she was really like the own standard bearer of Republicans against Trump, and acknowledging that he was the criminal that he is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that is truly amazing to me, is that trying to understand. I mean, that's what I'm saying. 100 years from now, when hopefully this whole thing collapses within the Republican Party and they dissolve into like two different parties or whatever the hell happens, and then we have a three-way battle for power for the next 50 years or whatever happens, I would love to just see how it's looked back upon. It's like, what was this in reality? That I'd also like to see us prove alien contact. That would be good too. I mean,
let's talk about that. We're covering everything here. I love this show.
Yeah.
So, well, I personally think for people who say, "Oh, there's no other life out there." I mean, for as big as the universe is, to think that we are the only life form is, to me, ignorant. There's no way that we're the only thing here. I mean, I know, and it's funny, as I mentioned, my brother was a fighter pilot, and I don't know if he's been in Area 51 or he's definitely flown over, but I mean, he obviously can't talk about anything. He's sworn to privacy or secrecy, but there's definitely things. There's definitely life out there. What's your opinion?
I mean, just from a statistical perspective, there has to be. I mean, I'm just absolutely certain of that. I mean, the phenomenal distances are the things that like make it, sort of like. So how does that get conquered?
Yeah.
As we're capable, shit, we're gonna have enough trouble just getting to Mars without everybody's bones turning to jello. It's just like the aspect of we don't handle non-gravity for very well, and all of our systems are designed to work within a gravity field, and the idea that even going to the nearest star, if we could go at light speed, it's still going to be like 4.5 years of no gravity. So it's wondering how like other technologies, other life forms would accomplish these sort of things to traverse those distances. But I don't doubt that it's totally possible. or in any number of ways, even by ways of communication or some other thing, you know. But it's like, uh, and there's been the thing with human beings, though, is once again, it's just like the invisible gorilla. We see what we think we're seeing. You know, we don't necessarily see what's actually there. We see what we think we're going to see, and I mean, human beings can, you know, misinterpret everything. You know, from a light on the horizon to a face of Jesus and a piece of toast. You know, I mean, so I mean, and they will believe it with such a fervor that it will be as real as if, you know, it was ordained by the universe.
Mhm.
So the subjectivity of human beings, and I mean that goes with any number of human experiences that we haven't been able to figure out how to what should I say, record, analyze, put to data, put under, because scientific scrutiny demands measurement.
Mhm.
Scientific scrutiny demands that you have actual factual information to be able to look at something and be able to say, oh, yes, the little needle wiggled just a little bit when he was thinking about the word duck. And then she said duck over there, and her little needle wiggled exactly the same way. And they weren't even actually looking at each other or saying the same. So they must have communicated this in some way, you know. And so like that, if we can do that, then yeah, absolutely, you can prove a whole bunch of shit. But there's all sorts of things that human beings experience that there's really, because of that subjectiveness,
Mhm.
that we can't know, where does this come from, where does it, is there like, you know, is this person really seeing an alien life form out there, or are they interpreting something in their own mind in a certain way?
Yeah.
Uh, you know, is this, you know, and I'm not saying, and I'm absolutely not saying that there have not been uh, uh, very unique experiences or contacts in the world, but I don't know what they are. And I would love, that's what I said. I really, really hope that before I pass from this mortal coil, that I actually get to see some proof of alien life forms. I doubt it. I
Yeah.
think it will take like hundreds of generations before that happens. But if it does, but who knows? You know, the other aspect of optics is if we can look at actual planetary surfaces and see technological evidence, see any number of things because of the energy emanations, because of the light waves, because of whatever magnificent technologies we have that are looking at nanoparticles that was sent, you know, 212,000 years ago from a planet or star so far away that we can't even imagine in the sky. Yet suddenly we can see the surface of that place. Hey, cool. I'll believe that. I'll go with that. I think that's likely to happen. You know, but human beings they are the creatures. I think the purpose of human beings. I know everybody's been wondering this. Generations, people have wondered this. Jerry Crystal's got the purpose of human beings right here.
Let's hear it.
Okay, totally easy. It's plain as the nose on your face. Human beings create that which nature cannot create for itself.
Mhm.
We are able to do things, and I mean, and easy. Here's a easy sort of comparison: AM radio. AM is basically electrostatic changes, fluctuations, which nature does it by itself. You get an AM radio. You take some Scotch tape and you go zit, and you'll hear the AM radio go crackle, crackle, crackle.
Yeah.
So that's what nature can do by itself. FM radio, where a frequency is modulated, where it's shifted and changed, doesn't happen any place in nature. Doesn't happen at all because it's artificial.
Mhm.
Laser light, coherent light, does not exist in nature, cannot exist in nature, because the situations of how it organizes it, how you get the photons all set up in the same direction at the same time, is different than any other form of light that occurs in the physical universe that we know of.
Mhm.
So it's our ability to create that which nature cannot create on its own, that sort of imbues us with, if there is such a word to be put to a purpose.
Yep.
You know, And the purposes, of course, is to restart the entire universe at the end.
And you know, you got speaking of because as I mentioned before, you and I met first in a writing class with our friend David Robbins. Did you ever
Yes.
think of putting all of what we just talked about for the last 2.5 hours or so into a book? I think this would be very interesting. The World According to Jerry. I like it. I would read it. I'd put me on the list on the pre-order list. I want a signed copy now.
I appreciate that very much. Well, one of the other aspects of what this whole trip did for me, I became very infatuated with 360 video, which is truly amazing stuff. It allows the software to basically eliminate the selfie stick, so it seems like the camera's floating up above situations. It video everything in every direction. And so I did a lot of that. As a matter of fact, I did 1.25 terabytes of video over the few months of travel. And some of it is truly, truly amazing. And what the cameras are able, or what the software is able to do with the video once you take it, is truly amazing because it allows you to, because it's recording everything in every direction. So let's say I'll be going down the canals in Amsterdam. And then at 15 seconds, there's a cathedral on the left-hand side, and at 45 seconds, there's a statue on the right-hand side, and a little bit later on, there's something else. You go and you make a keyframe around that object at each of those spots, and then as you come to it, the camera automatically shifts because you've taken every direction video, right? It automatically shifts and it zooms in on that particular thing until it shifts again to the next particular keyframe, and it is truly amazing. It's like being able to take multiple cameras of a particular scene, and so like editing and working with some of that video is like stuff I'm really looking forward to. And then another aspect of this as well is, and this was something I was totally not into at all prior to doing this travel stuff, is like for nature photography, Haida Gwaii Island has fantastic eagles and ravens are the two major species, and the two clans of the Haida people are the eagle clan and the raven clan, and it's truly amazing. But the thing that's great is like you can take a scene of like an eagle swooping down in and getting a fish and then coming back up and flying away. And all you have to do is like the instant that the eagle comes into view, because once again, you've got every direction, you just put a box around it, and then it keeps totally steady with the eagle at the center of the frame the entire way. So
Oh,
like
okay.
rather than you trying to follow the picture of trying to follow the eagle, keep steady with it and all that sort of stuff, it automatically takes all the video and it just like follows it totally steady, goes down, gets the fish, goes up, perfectly beautiful, smooth. So when you see some of this nature videos that's looking really amazing like that now,
Yeah.
this is like one of those cameras because all you have to do is set the camera out on a tripod out in the middle somewhere, record anything in nature for a while, and then you can just pick out the things that you want to follow in the video, and it will follow them smoothly and effortlessly.
Oh,
So this is the thing, and in particular, I'm looking forward to seeing like the King's birthday parade, because all the stuff that was like I basically held up a 15-foot selfie stick above me with a 360 camera and just let this huge gigantic crowd of people push me around, and it was like an amazing trip. So like looking back on the video will be an activity into itself. So if I'm making a book out of this, I may I have as I you might have seen, I don't know if you saw the video for the first Say Yes. The I have that up on the YouTube. If I go forward with that, then I'll post some of the things up there and some of the insights,
yeah.
and
Well, actually, yeah. Let me know and tell my viewers where can people see this YouTube. Would they type in Jerry Crystal with a J?
well, if you just you can do Jerry Crystal, JerryCrystal, but if you also just said first Say Yes 2023, just as one word,
Okay.
uh, it'll lead you to a channel. It's First Say Yes 2023. I believe First Say Yes Alone is a religious group someplace in Missouri, so I had to have 2023. But there's a video there that was one of the first ones I did with the 360, and just sort of explained the story of with Brianna Giddens and getting inspired to do the stuff that I did. And and that's the biggest thing. I was like, if there's anything I just say to people is, have more faith in yourself. You really can do it. Yeah, you may not think that you can, and there'll be some point in time when you'll feel like you can't at all, but you can do it. And it's like the great thing to remember is that this too shall pass. When there are good times, appreciate the good times, because this too shall pass. When there are bad times, know that they'll be over soon, because this too shall pass. And I think that's a long-term view for anybody, but I think that's a good one to think about.
Well, I think those are all great life lessons. I'm so glad that you happened to be asked to chaperone that Connecticut Forum. I'm so glad that inspired you to take this trip. And I'm even more happy that it spiraled into you being on the show and telling me and all my viewers about it, because I'm inspired. I want to go book a trip right now after we end the show, because just like you, I have that sense of adventure and I want to experience as much as I can before, because some people may seem like it seems like a long time, but we're on this earth for a very short time. So make the most out of it. I do believe the phrase carpe diem, live life to the fullest. And I'm glad that you are doing that. And even and what I love, here's what inspires me the most about you. You mentioned your hip, you mentioned your back, you mentioned your sciatic nerve, you mentioned all these different things, and you're being wheeled onto a cruise by a doctor, and you still said, nope, I'm not canceling, I'm going to do this. So that, for anybody who is in the prime of their life saying, oh, I don't know if I could do it, listen, if Jerry could do it, you can too.
I appreciate you saying that, and I agree with you 1,000%. Yeah. The obstacles are not there to stop us. They're there to see how badly we want to get to our goal.
Yeah. I think most of the things that we do is like 90% mental. Like, for example, because I got into running. So I do a lot of the 5Ks, which I'm work my way up to a marathon. And they're always saying, when I watch these or read books or watch documentaries on different runners, they always say it's 90% mental, and the rest of it is physical, because you think you can't do it, but when your body is ready to just drop, go to the mental part, and you could probably go a lot more. It's just people give up way too soon before they really need to give up. They think, oh no, I can't do it anymore. Yes, you can.
Absolutely. That I'm going to hang up in a little bit, but I was just thinking about a great example of that is the movie Gattaca. Do you know the movie Gattaca?
It's funny. I know of it. I never saw it though, but I heard it's really good.
Absolutely, you should see it. But one of the aspects of it is one brother who is genetically quote unquote superior to the other one.
Mm-hmm.
They would race each other swimming across the lake at night, and the one who was like less genetically superior like won in like some dramatic time, and the guy and the other one asked him like, well, how did you do that, because you wouldn't have enough energy to get back to swim back. And he said, I didn't care about swimming back.
I love it.
That's it. He said, I had to swim out. I didn't care how much I was to swim back. And that's it. It's like giving it into life, giving yourself into your own life. And that's a great thing. Thank you for the opportunity, Rich. I really appreciate it. I hope I have another chance to chat with you again. I'd appreciate that as well.
Oh, you are welcome on to the Claw's Corner anytime. I had the best time talking to you. It was so interesting, so much fun. So yeah, please come back anytime you have something to say. And before we go, do you have anything you want to promote?
As always, I've been doing a variety of things with the Nutmeg Junction. I'll be working on a piece with some people coming up, a adaptation of the Telltale Heart. It's a classic, but written by or adapted by Randy Hudson, who did a really great job with the Barron City series, which is really cool. But doing that, and then just like trying to do a little bit of writing and figure myself out as well. That's the whole thing. Is like, just because you go on the quest doesn't mean you get all the things that you could have on the journey. So I'm still sorting through sorting through the booty.
All right. Well, keep sorting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we go, I want to say one thing because you mentioned Telltale Heart. Very recently, I interviewed Tina Cole. She played Katie on My Three Sons, but she has such a great history behind her. The interview's going to be on soon. But the reason I bring her up is she sent me off the air. Her father did Telltale. He played the organ. He did the organ on The Sound of Music. He did a couple 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh wow!
She sent to me. He plays organ for Telltale Heart. James Mason narrating. I listened to it the other
James
day.
Mason, Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Yep, that would be the one.
Oh,
I'm gonna send it to you because you're gonna love it. It's such
Oh,
a great
I
adaptation.
love
adaptation.
James Mason.
Well, I asked her because I said, "Well, I'm sure you met James Mason." She goes, "I was so young," but she goes, "He is just like he is in the movies. What you see in the movies, that is how he was in person." She goes, "He was such a great guy, but he does such a great reading of it, and her father does such, with the organs and everything."
I would absolutely love to listen to that. Thank you so much. How coincidental.
I know. I'm so glad you brought that up. So, and
Excellent.
people don't know, Joseph Timothy Quirk, who edits this show for the radio, has his own radio show, which I'm a part of sometimes. It's called Nutmeg Junction, and it's played all over the world. I mean, New Zealand, I know, is one place. I mean, of course, in the U.S., he keeps spreading. Every time I get another email, it's like, "Oh, we're here now. We're playing here." I love it. The work he does is phenomenal, and he has so many great voice actors, including you. And I love listening to it even when I'm not a part of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's great to listen to, and it also gives people opportunities to write adaptations, to direct, to produce, to create this, and it's very much community theater as well. Local people creating local things. It's just like local music, so it's very much apprecited and a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, Jerry, once again, thank you very, very much for being on the show. Had a great time, and I hope everybody that's watching is as inspired as I am.
Thanks.
All right. That wraps up the latest episode of the Claus Corner. A huge thanks goes out to retired teacher, world traveler, and voiceover actor Jerry Crystal for taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to be a guest on my show. I also need to thank editor extraordinaire John Bristol of the award-winning Elmwood Productions for his superb work editing the show each and every week and making it available to all on YouTube. I am also extremely grateful to Joseph Timothy Quirk and Rob Bull for all they do to make my show available on several Connecticut radio stations, as well as iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. Thank you both very, very much. And lastly, but definitely not least, I need to thank you, the viewer, for always tuning in. Enjoy your day, everyone.